Connect, innovate, diversify.
The Gladstone region is often referred to as an industrial town, but it hosts much more than meets the eye. The wider region hosts a diverse and important range of natural environments. There are endangered terrestrial ecosystems and many threatened species of plants and animals, some of which can only be found here. The region's 150-kilometre coastline extends from Raglan Creek in the north to Baffle Creek in the south. There are over 254 square kilometres of wetland, most of which are valuable estuarine systems. These wetlands feature important seagrass meadows and mangrove systems, providing a natural storm surge protection. Parts of the coastline also serve as important turtle nesting sites. 55% of the region is covered by natural vegetation, with 16% of our land classified as nature, conservation, forestry and parkland, including national parks. These conserved lands and their surrounds provide vital habitat for the 64 threatened animal species living here. Gladstone Regional Council recognises our responsibility to protect and conserve biodiversity values. We strongly value our natural environment and appreciate the eco-services our environment provides to both our economy and community. And we're striving for sustainable growth through both our policies and plans. Every year, Council proudly participates in many environmental initiatives, partnering with community groups and enthusiastic volunteers. We also facilitate a volunteer program called Friends of Conservation, where volunteers work with our people to propagate plants as well as other conservation projects. We recognise climate change and the environmental and economic impacts this will bring to our region. We are one of 30 Queensland coastal councils now participating in the Our Coast, Our Future program. This program is addressing potential economic, environmental and social impacts climate change may bring, and will see the creation of a coastal hazard adaptation strategy to manage shoreline erosion, inundation of coastal areas, and give direction on the long-term management of the region's coastline. The diversity of the Gladstone region's natural environment contributes to its appeal as a destination to visit and enhances the quality of life for residents. Gladstone Regional Council will continue to develop strategies to preserve, conserve, and enhance these natural settings for present and future generations.
Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify.
The Gladstone region is often referred to as an industrial town, but it hosts much more than meets the eye. The wider region hosts a diverse and important range of natural environments. There are endangered terrestrial ecosystems and many threatened species of plants and animals, some of which can only be found here. The region's 150-kilometre coastline extends from Raglan Creek in the north to Baffle Creek in the south. There are over 254 square kilometres of wetland, most of which are valuable estuarine systems. These wetlands feature important seagrass meadows and mangrove systems, providing a natural storm surge protection. Parts of the coastline also serve as important turtle nesting sites. 55% of the region is covered by natural vegetation, with 16% of our land classified as nature, conservation, forestry and parkland, including national parks. These conserved lands and their surrounds provide vital habitat for the 64 threatened animal species living here. Gladstone Regional Council recognises our responsibility to protect and conserve biodiversity values. We strongly value our natural environment and appreciate the eco-services our environment provides to both our economy and community. And we're striving for sustainable growth through both our policies and plans. Every year, Council proudly participates in many environmental initiatives, partnering with community groups and enthusiastic volunteers. We also facilitate a volunteer program called Friends of Conservation, where volunteers work with our people to propagate plants as well as other conservation projects. We recognise climate change and the environmental and economic impacts this will bring to our region. We are one of 30 Queensland coastal councils now participating in the Our Coast, Our Future program. This program is addressing potential economic, environmental and social impacts climate change may bring, and will see the creation of a coastal hazard adaptation strategy to manage shoreline erosion, inundation of coastal areas, and give direction on the long-term management of the region's coastline. The diversity of the Gladstone region's natural environment contributes to its appeal as a destination to visit and enhances the quality of life for residents. Gladstone Regional Council will continue to develop strategies to preserve, conserve, and enhance these natural settings for present and future generations.
Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify.
The Gladstone region is often referred to as an industrial town, but it hosts much more than meets the eye. The wider region hosts a diverse and important range of natural environments. There are endangered terrestrial ecosystems and many threatened species of plants and animals, some of which can only be found here. The region's 150-kilometre coastline extends from Raglan Creek in the north to Baffle Creek in the south. There are over 254 square kilometres of wetland, most of which are valuable estuarine systems. These wetlands feature important seagrass meadows and mangrove systems, providing a natural storm surge protection. Parts of the coastline also serve as important turtle nesting sites. 55% of the region is covered by natural vegetation, with 16% of our land classified as nature, conservation, forestry and parkland, including national parks. These conserved lands and their surrounds provide vital habitat for the 64 threatened animal species living here. Gladstone Regional Council recognises our responsibility to protect and conserve biodiversity values. We strongly value our natural environment and appreciate the eco-services our environment provides to both our economy and community. And we're striving for sustainable growth through both our policies and plans. Every year, Council proudly participates in many environmental initiatives, partnering with community groups and enthusiastic volunteers. We also facilitate a volunteer program called Friends of Conservation, where volunteers work with our people to propagate plants as well as other conservation projects. We recognise climate change and the environmental and economic impacts this will bring to our region. We are one of 30 Queensland coastal councils now participating in the Our Coast, Our Future program. This program is addressing potential economic, environmental and social impacts climate change may bring, and will see the creation of a coastal hazard adaptation strategy to manage shoreline erosion, inundation of coastal areas, and give direction on the long-term management of the region's coastline. The diversity of the Gladstone region's natural environment contributes to its appeal as a destination to visit and enhances the quality of life for residents. Gladstone Regional Council will continue to develop strategies to preserve, conserve, and enhance these natural settings for present and future generations.
Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify.
Well, good morning. The time being 9 a.m, I declare open the general meeting for the Gladstone Regional Council for the 18th of August 2020. Call for apology.
That I may stand to gain a benefit from the decision to be made, and I will leave the room for the consideration of and any voting in relation to funding for Agnes Water 1770 Little Athletics.
Thank you, Councillor.
They have no other interest in the event and will not receive any financial benefit from hosting the event. I have determined that this personal interest is not of sufficient significance that will lead me to make a decision on the matter that is contrary to the public interest. I will best perform my responsibility of serving the overall public interest by participating in the discussion and voting on this matter.
Thank you, Councillor Branthwaite. Councillors, can I have a motion whether Councillor Branthwaite has a conflict or not, please? Is that correct, Tanya? First move. Councillor Goodluck.
Happy to move that he's got a perceived conflict.
Thank you. Councillor Goodluck moves that there's perceived conflict. Seconder, please. Is that Councillor Muscat? Thank you. There's a mover and a seconder that a perceived conflict exists. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. Now we will decide whether Councillor Branthwaite will remain in the room. Over to you, Councillor Goodluck.
Happy to move that Councillor Branthwaite remains in the room.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Councillor Muscat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to ask you to clarify, what do you mean by hosting?
Hosted is probably the compere, announcing the race and welcoming everybody and basically doing commentary on the race and promoting the people that are sponsors and so forth.
It's MC. The event, yeah.
Thank you. I have a mover, Councillor Goodluck.
MC.
That no conflict exists. A seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Move that he
Stay in the room.
Yeah.
Sorry, yes, correct. And that stays in the room. You've already moved that there was a conflict. Move Councillor Goodluck, second Councillor Cameron, that Councillor Branthwaite remain in the room. I'll put that motion. All in favour. It's carried. Thank you, councillors. Is there any other perceived conflicts, material personal interest that you'd like to raise now? If any arise during the meeting, please make sure you raise them. The next item on the agenda before our deputation is the Mayor's statement on current issues, and today is Vietnam Vets Day. And today we join together to commemorate and pay tribute to those who served in the Vietnam War, including those family and friends from the Gladstone region. I will be leaving the council meeting and heading over to Deputy Mayor at about 10 a.m. To pay tribute to our local Vietnam vets at the Gladstone Cenotaph. Last week, Councillor Goodluck and the CEO and myself attended the CQ Rock meeting in Brisbane, where we were very fortunate enough to meet with a number of ministers and put forward the Central Queensland case for funding for upcoming projects for their consideration in the Queensland government election, of course, and also highlight the priorities and the important issues for Central Queensland. It was very pleasing to see at that meeting that it looks like Rockhampton will be rejoining the Rock as well at this point in time. Tonight we will join with other local legends, I guess you could say, and I hope I'm not stealing their thunder here, but for the launch of the State Emergency Services book. They're celebrating 45 years in the Gladstone region, and it is a fantastic book and a fantastic keepsake, I guess, for the history of 45 years of the SES in the Gladstone region. And it says, in recognition of this milestone, a comprehensive book detailing the history of the services being released, and that is that book which we launched tonight in Gladstone at the Grand Hotel. And of course, this Friday is the Virtual Seniors Week morning tea. So for those seniors, make sure you pop in or get a family member to pop into one of our Gladstone Regional Council customer service centres and pick up your voucher so you can get your free coffee and cake and scones or whatever else you like from a number of local providers right across the region, and then join us for our virtual morning tea on Friday for our Seniors Week celebrations. The next item on the agenda is the confirmation of minutes, but before we move to the confirmation of the minutes, I'll invite our deputation, Lee McIver, and Nigel Lavender, who is on Teams. Welcome, Nigel, and Lee McIver will be coming in shortly. Welcome, Lee. And Nigel is on Teams up there. And so I'll hand over to you for your deputation. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you, councillors, for allowing me or inviting me to come to you today. For those of you who I haven't met before, I'm Lee McIver. I live just 14 k's south of Miriamvale on a 300-acre property, and I've been in the Gladstone region for a number of years, as most of you know. And I'm here to talk about a project that we're actually in the process of creating and funding. The project itself, and I should introduce Nigel Lavender. Nigel is presenting with me today. Nigel is a former head of QMF, the Queensland Music Festival, and he and I have been cohorting together for the past year on this project, developing the project up and making sure that we have enough stakeholders involved in the project. Nigel will be talking today about the budget on this project. It is quite a major project. So together, I suppose that both of us have quite a wide experience of the arts. Obviously, Nigel being the head of QMF, who did, if you recall, Boomtown here in Gladstone a number of years ago, about, what was it, Nigel? Would it be about 10, 11 years, 9 or 10 years ago?
It was 2013, Lee.
Ah, there you go.
So not long ago.
Not long. So together we make quite a formidable team, I would say. Nigel with his huge experience at QMF and managing major events, and myself with a wide experience in arts and marketing and media. So what I'd like to start off first is to just give you a brief description about this project. It's called Wrapped in Moogal. Moogal is the Indigenous name for Mount Coliseum, which is where I live. We live right at the base of Mount Coliseum, 300-acre property that is a site of significance for the Gurang people. We've been in quite heavy discussions with the Gurang about this project, and after this meeting, I'm actually meeting with Richard Johnson again to just talk about where we're at. So Wrapped in Moogal is an ephemeral arts installation project. It aims to put 5 major or quite large artworks along the Bruce Highway between Baroran and Coliseum Creek Motel. We have 5 sites on the highway. They're on private land, so there is no issues with transport or main roads. Deliberate on our part, because I just do not want to have that interaction with TMR, and it can be quite difficult. So we have Kurawatha Motel, just south of Baroran. Barry Ross has a site on that big right-hand bend as you're coming into Miriamvale from the north. He has a property on the left-hand side, just where the start of the northbound overtaking lanes are, outside of Miriamvale. Mitch at the Miriamvale pub will have a site there. There is another private site south of Miriamvale, and the Coliseum Creek Motel. So they're the sites that we've chosen because they seem to have the best viewpoint for people to actually see these artworks when they're built. We also will have 10 artworks on the site of Moogal Mountain Retreat, which is my property, or me and my partner's property. The idea came about to do this project, I suppose, from a number of things that I've seen. New South Wales has a project called Sculpture at Scenic World. Sculpture at Scenic World is held at Katoomba. It's run every year. It's now seen as a major event by the New South Wales government and is funded on a yearly basis. They had last year 200,000 people visit this event. They have a boardwalk that runs through the National Park in Katoomba, and they have artworks that are put on the side and within the boardwalk. I'll circulate around a document. This is a catalogue from 2019. I've got a few copies that I can give you that shows you the types of artworks that this place, Sculpture at Scenic World, encourages. They have a huge prize pool. They've been going for 8 years. They started off quite small, but now massive, and to such an extent, as I said, that the New South Wales government is actually funding them on a 3-year basis as a major project, a major destination project for them. The artists come from all over the world for this project. We're not thinking it for us just yet. So what we would like to do with Raptimugul is to actually put out an expression of interest that encourages our artists here in the Gladstone region primarily, but also those in central Queensland to actually put in an expression of interest to create a piece of art for these sites. They can select the sites that they want to put their artwork on, so they can either go on the Bruce Highway, which will have quite strict guidelines as to how those artworks have to be and the requirements around them. Artists will be required to have their own public liability. They will be covered under the site's public liability as well. We'll work with the sites for a COVID-safe plan as well. There are only 3 sites that will be able to have public interaction with the artwork, and that is Coliseum Creek Motel, the Miriam Vale Pub, and Kurawatha. They're the 3 sites that public will be able to access the artworks. So that was, so I'm sort of swinging around a little bit here. So the inspiration was seeing these massive artworks in New South Wales and in Tasmania. If you drive between Hobart and Lonnie, there's a series of metalworks along the highway that detail a bushranger's hold-up. Fantastic. So these have all given me an inspiration to actually develop a project that will bring visitors into our region, but also primarily into Miriam Vale and Baroran, 2 tiny towns, a population maybe of about 1,000 people all up, to encourage visitors to stop, to spend some time in both these towns, to spend a bit of money. To increase overnight stays as well, because we have a number of camping grounds at Baroran. We've got the caravan park at Miriam Vale. We've got a number of motels. So the idea is to increase visitation, to increase the spend in those parts of the region. And being kind of the southern entry into Gladstone, we're in a prime destination spot to actually create interest in our region and showcase a different aspect to our region. All the business houses in Miriam Vale and Baroran are supportive of the idea and really want to be involved in it. We were given funding through the RADF last year to actually develop a business plan and marketing plan. I will circulate it around later. I've got it here for you guys to read. I don't expect you to kind of be reading it now, but just so that you can get an overview, and it's quite a detailed plan for the project. It gives you all our stats, why we think this is an event that will work. We have 4,000 cars that drive through Baroran and Miriam Vale every day, so we have a captured audience. There is a very extensive marketing plan within this business and marketing plan. We have been supported as well by CQ Resin, which is the regional arts service network that covers the arts development through Arts Queensland, funded by Arts Queensland through this region. So they have actually provided us with funding to develop the website, which is currently in development now and should be finished and ready by the end of September. We are also working with the schools, the Baroran and Miriam Vale schools, who want to be involved in the project, very keen to have some involvement in there. So we're seeking funding through Flying Arts and in quite positive discussions with Flying Arts, who have offered to support us in this way to provide an artist in residence for both of those schools. So a separate artist for both of those schools that will work with those schools prior to the launch of this event in July next year, which is when we want to actually run the event, between July and September. Prime travelling time, grey nomads, tourists, out of bushfire season, out of flood season, everything. So the schools are really excited about it. Flying Arts have indicated that they will support that program through their funding, through their Artists in Residence program, particularly for regional areas. We've had long discussions with Arts Queensland as well about the project. We currently have an application into Arts Queensland through their Queensland Arts Showcase program for funding for this project, and we're also putting in another funding round to Arts Queensland. We have special dispensation to put a second funding round into another funding program, which they just recently announced, called Spaces and Places. This Spaces and Places program is geared specifically for regional Queensland and specifically for projects that will partner with council and the RTOs to develop tourism and increase tourism into their areas. The funding round offers up to $250,000 for a project. So we are currently pulling that funding application together. That will go in this Friday. It closes this Friday. We've had quite long discussions with, as Darryl knows, with the GAPDL and had another discussion with them last week. They are providing quite a detailed letter of support for the project. Arts Queensland requires some indication that there is a partnership between the RTOs and the councils for any projects that are going into this funding round. So we've asked GAPDL to actually specify exactly what it is that they can support us with. We don't expect cash, but we do expect an in-kind support. So that letter is forthcoming and will be ready for the application on Friday. The Gurang have also offered support for the project and want to be heavily involved. So we've had long discussions with Richard, also talking with Julie, Ingra, about the artists that they can supply or that they would recommend for this project. So there is a particular importance for the first year, next year, to actually have the artworks reflect Indigenous history of the region. Given that the property that we live on is a site of significance for the Gurang, we feel that it is quite important that we acknowledge that history in some capacity. So this project is going to be asking artists in their expressions of interest to actually provide some information about how they're going to deal or what kind of things they're going to do to actually reflect on the Indigenous history of the Miriam Vale region, not necessarily not necessarily here, but here in Gladstone proper, but actually for the Miriam Vale and Barroran regions. So loads of support. Every business house in Miriam Vale and Barroran are really keen for this project, have written support letters. We've had meetings with them. We've actually discussed the business plan and had business plan meetings with them. It was part of the requirements of the RADF funding when we actually did the strategic plan and developed that up, that we consult with businesses in the Barroran and Miriam Vale regions. So that has been done. They're fully aware of the project. They're absolutely ecstatic and super excited about it. They love anything and would support anything that will bring more visitors into well, particularly Miriam Vale and Barroran, given that it's kind of like just a drive-through, you know. It's not necessarily encouraged to stop and have a look and see what's there because they are so tiny, particularly Barroran. So a really important project. It has a budget of around $200,000. The reason why I'm here today is to brief you guys, but also to discuss, I suppose, or put into your minds how the Gladstone region, how Gladstone Council can support this project, whether it's in-kind or cash. Arts Queensland have said that they require strong letters of support from partners who would be in this project. And given that already Council has supported the project to the realm of nearly $9,000 through the development, through RADF, through developing the business and marketing plan, I would hope that this is a project that Council would be quite happy and quite keen to support, given that the results of it will be an increase in visitor numbers to our region, an increase in overnight stays to Miriam Vale and Barroran, and actually support these small towns that often feel that they've been neglected or just bypassed in the greater scheme of things. I think, Desley, you'd probably understand that, being out in the Boyne and Calliope. So the project itself, it will be a COVID-safe project. The site, I'll give you a couple of pics. I'll just show a couple of pics because I know we've got a time limit. This here is, are we on the number one? Are we on number one? Where is it? Oh, could we have the first? Oh, yes, sorry, the second one. Oh, that's Kurawatha, yeah. So this is Kurawatha Motel, and the site that we're thinking of, because it's such an open plan site, would be in here. So that would be, public could interact on that site, given that Kurawatha will allow it, unless, you know, we put fencing around it. The next site, just to refresh, here's another one of Kurawatha. So it's somewhere in that, you know, that open section that's at Kurawatha. Oh, the next one. Miriam Vale, oh, can you go back one, please? This one? Yeah, Miriam Vale Hotel. So where we're putting it, and Mitch is quite happy, is on the, as you're looking at the Miriam Vale Hotel on the left-hand side, just near where that massive big tree is, so on his side there, he's quite keen for that. Another picture of it, so it'd be somewhere in this region here. Next one. This is the Moogle Road, which council has taken over control of in the last 3 years. What's the plan for the entry into Moogle Mountain is a series of totem poles, which we're in discussion with Julie Ingber about, that will be constructed by an Indigenous artist here in Gladstone, that will walk its way through to the entrance of Moogle. Can I have the next one, please? A further example of the road. So council maintains that road now. They've haven't graded it for a couple of years, but we'll be grading.
Lee, would I be able to just grab someone to get Lee a microphone for the people listening online so they can hear? That's okay.
That's one over here. Can I have the next one, please? So we sit at the base of Mount Coliseum, or Moogle Mountain. Its Indigenous name is Moogle Mountain. We have remnant rainforest on this property. So the walkway 10 artworks will be through here. Can we just scroll through things? This is the site. So it's quite leafy. We will have a proper walkway through the section, and then artworks can be on the side. Oh, sorry, that's Bonnie, baby. Photo bombing. So this is the suggested site where we will have 10 artworks on it. Keep going. Yep. So it just shows you the rainforest, remnant rainforest. Keep going, keep going. So this is the style of artwork that we will have probably on the Bruce Highway. This is a Jimmy Ricks sculpture. He was initially asked, but he's not available. He is a New South Wales artist that specialises in metalwork. So just so that you can see that we're not talking small-scale artworks for the Bruce Highway. These will be major artworks, quite large, that people will not be able to miss on the highway. A project like this has never been done in Queensland before. This will be the first time. Arts Queensland, as I said, Flying Arts, are really quite keen about it. We have a number of partners as well through this that will be involved in the judging panel. Oh, sorry, I should have explained. So we will have, how we'll set this up. First off, the website will be created. Expression of interest will be called from artists throughout the Central Queensland and Gladstone regions, and possibly into Queensland. Once the expression of interests have been received, a judging panel will be formed. The judging panel will be from people like Cameron Curd at Gragham, Bundaberg Art Gallery, Creative Regions. So Flying Arts will obviously suggest some reputable artists and arts professionals that will go through the expressions of interest and select 15 artworks. The expressions of interest are quite detailed. The artists will have to be quite detailed in what they propose to make for the project. And then each artist will be paid $5,000 plus the cost of their materials. So the project was devised to actually provide employment opportunities for the artists in our region. That was one of my concerns here, that we don't have enough work and serious work for artists. The artworks will be available for sale. The project itself will provide incredible exposure for the artists that are selected, and also incredible exposure for the region. We expect massive publicity for this project once it's up and running, once the sculptures are on board. So we have, as our partners, we've got all the business houses of Miriamvale and Baroran. We've got CQ Rasen, who are willing to support the project. Flying Arts, Regional Arts Australia, through their RAF fund. Arts Queensland, RADAF already has, as Glenn knows, has already supported the project. Gragham, Bundy Regional Art Gallery and Creative Regions. So these are the partners that we're working with now, and also Gladstone Regional Council, obviously, hopefully, and GAPDL, that will help us actually pull this project together. So I might just pass over to Nigel, who can talk to you about money. The most important, obviously, part.
Thank you very much, Lee, and good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to see some of you who know me from the past and my close interest in the Gladstone region over quite a few years. I've been delighted to get involved with Lee on this project. I won't take up a lot of time here, but I think it's important to say what's most interesting about it is that it's a start-up project. It's a new initiative. It's very innovative and interesting opportunity to create something that in an area where there is a very dispersed population who feel probably a little bit neglected, bearing in mind the Bruce Highway swings right through that region, and we're trying to create an opportunity for people to stop and engage in something which is not only an arts experience, but also a moment of tranquility in a very, very beautiful setting. And I think it's such a stressful time that we're all going through. One of the things we want to promote is a sense of mindfulness and peacefulness in what is a very tranquil and beautiful setting, and a chance for people to stop and just enjoy the nature and the interaction of the artworks. It's a flagship project. This is a really interesting idea, which really is developing something in an area where nothing much currently goes on, but it supports the local community. It's a cultural tourism initiative, and cultural tourism initiatives are often hugely successful in bringing attention to areas which have been neglected in the past. And that's I think, what we're trying to do, create something out of nothing which will be a cultural tourism opportunity for both the local community, for schools, and for the regional artists who will engage with the project. In terms of money, the current budget is sitting around 186,000 for year one. And we are looking for partners, as Lee mentions. The major partner will have to be Arts Queensland. We've had a lot of long and detailed discussions with Arts Queensland, and this new fund they've just announced, the Spaces and Places project, is our biggest opportunity to date. So if we apply to them for, we're probably going to expand the budget and look at some other ideas to go in there, but we'll probably apply for about 150k from Arts Queensland to get this project off the ground. But it will not fly. It will not fly unless we've got a key core partnership with Gladstone Council to show your support. And I'm just being honest with you. I think the truth is that the major investment for the project will come from outside the region, but we need significant support from within the region to show support from the local community, from council, and a recognition of how important this project is going forward, because it is a long-term project. I think the ambition is to make this an annual event. And it's not a profit-making enterprise. This is purely a project which is going to deliver benefits for the local community. So I don't think anyone's going to make huge amounts of money out of it. It's simply something that we can achieve locally for the benefit of all in the community. The other major funder would be the Regional Arts Fund. We expect to apply to them for $30,000. I have to declare an interest there because literally 2 weeks ago I started a new job running the Regional Arts Fund. But that's another matter, and I will declare a conflict of interest when that happens in due course. But there are a number of other smaller partners. There'll be the Regional Arts Service Network, the possibility of going to the John Villiers Trust and others. So we will, by hook or by crook, raise this money and get it off the ground. But I commend the project to you. From my experience running a large organisation like Queensland Music Festival, I brought that experience to bear on this project. And I'm confident that it'll be very successful in the long run. And I think Lee's energy is undeniable, and I think she's really come up with something quite extraordinary. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm conscious of time, but I imagine you may have some questions, so I'll hand over to the Mayor. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Nigel. I will throw to councillors for questions. Councillor Braithwaite.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Lee, and thank you, Nigel, for your presentation. It's wonderful to see something that's been dreamed of or dreamt up and thought about for a long time to actually get some traction. And yeah, I've been down to Moggill and had a look and experienced some of the things down there that Lee's been speaking about. There's also a bit of congratulations for the fact that no one else is actually doing anything like this, but I just sort of got a couple of questions. One is surrounding the actual sculpture that's going to be created, or the pieces of art that's going to be created. Is it going to be themed at all, like centred around Indigenous or traditional owners, or is it just centred around artists and what they think up?
It's the theme this year is to reflect on the Indigenous history of the region of Miriam Vale and Bororan. So that will be the theme for the artworks. In the first year. Yep.
Right.
And I do understand that there's very little history available.
Yeah, look, like you're talking with Richard and that, and I've got no doubt there's a multitude of richness amongst all that because of what the area's actually got, especially what it represents, that particular park. The other thing is that, you know, like Marianvale is certainly a pass-through town, the same with Baroran, but, you know, Baroran, I think, means large white kangaroo, is that right?
Yeah, there's a dreaming story about Baru, the giant kangaroo that was escaping attack and scrambled up the mountains behind Baroran. You can actually, according to dreaming, you can see where the kangaroo actually ran up or crawled up the mountain.
Right.
And so Baroran, I believe, is
It's quite significant, isn't it?
and Baroran is probably a westernised version of Baru. So Baru has become Baroran, so it's kind of...
The other thing with Marianvale is that it has got a massive park in the middle of it too, okay? It does attract visitors. This would add to the richness of that. There's no doubt about that. And, look, I reckon you deserve all the support you can get.
Thanks, Darryl. We have been doing a lot of work on the Indigenous history. I have myself. As probably most of you know, that I created that first history book for the Gladstone Ports Corporation, and under the direction of Leo, who wanted specifically the Indigenous history acknowledged. And we did have a few, Leo and I did have a few arguments about what kind of history we should be acknowledging. Some of the dreaming stories for the Gurang Gurang are in there. So I've had quite close relationships with both Baili and Gurang Gurang over the years as a result of having to do that research and work with those guys and acknowledge and support them in terms of what we could say. And the massacre story in the first book, Leo did not want in. He did not want that in. But the Gurang Gurang demanded that it be in, actually said it had to go in or else. And so Leo had to step back and go, okay, all right, we'll leave it in there. So both good and bad history was in that. Yeah.
Councillor Churchill and then Councillor O'Grady for questions.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Mayor Matt. Just a couple of comments and then a couple of questions, if you wouldn't mind. Probably first and foremost, you acknowledge that our Regional Arts Development Fund, made up of a number of volunteer people in our region, supported this project as such in a way to be able to develop the business plan. So I make reference to the strategic plan, is that strategic plan effectively is the how and the who and the where and when and all the associated aspects that go with it. So to try and understand, one of the key points that came out of it, and you made reference to the point about public access, and that was one of the points that was discussed, deliberated from the RADIF committee, was that access by public. You've indicated that perhaps 3-4 sites will be readily available for public access, probably 24/7. I'm assuming that without...
Yeah, that's on the Bruce Highway, Glenn.
Yeah, okay,
but
so that's...
on the 10 sites and the Mughal Road will be accessed. There is public access for those as well.
Okay, so there's the 3 or 4, be it. And then I make reference to Council's public art policy. We have a public art policy that effectively says that we want all people to be able to enjoy any aspect of the public art. So I would imagine in determining in this strategic plan that for the future there's likely to be other infrastructure that may be considered for public art. And we've already seen some of that happening. So I just make reference to our public art policy in that the ready access to the public. So those art pieces that will be developed perhaps on private property, albeit on your property, the public could probably still access. Would that be the case?
Yes, there is total access for public.
At certain times?
Yeah, at this stage we've made it that on weekends and by appointment during the week.
I think that needs to be clearly understood, because from my perspective is doing public art when no one can have access to it,
it's crazy.
Well, it defeats the benefit of doing it as public art.
Yeah,
but you made the point that those that are on the Bruce Highway, it's readily available 24/7, and the other ones will be by appointment.
Or
so
on the weekends as well. So open on
okay.
weekends, but if they wanted to stop during the week, just need to give us a call so that we can make sure that there's someone there that can take them through and guide them through.
Okay, thank you, Lee, thank you, Nigel.
I could just chip in there, Councillor. The marketing for this event will be crucial. There'll be very public, transparent information available on how to access all parts of the exhibition. So we'll make sure that information is readily available to everybody who's going through the internet to find it.
Okay, thank you for that. And now is not the time for this council to be making a decision. We can be directed and guided by our mayor, but we need to ask the pertinent question. The pertinent question is that you're asking for a letter of support from the Gladstone Regional Council, and that obviously would come through the CEO's office or the mayor's office.
Yes,
the other part of it is if...
Sorry, Glenn, we already have, in January, Matt signed a letter of support for a QASP application, but this particular program from Arts Queensland requires quite specific detail. So rather than just we think this is fantastic, general letter of support that Matt did for the QASP program, Arts Queensland have actually said to us, given that we've been given special dispensation to apply for this whilst we have an application into QASP at the same time, the Queensland Arts Showcase program. So normally they would not allow one project to access two funding rounds at the same time. That they would need a strong letter. So Arts Queensland have said to me they would need a strong letter of support from GRC for your project and confirmation they will grant access to council land or infrastructure, if that's relevant, which it really isn't, except for Moogle Road maybe. They may be able to help you provide estimates of evidence of the impact and benefit of your project on visitation in the local economy. In-kind support will be highly regarded and cash support even more so. Okay. So we were going to apply for the Ignite program that Council runs every year that has a maximum of $25,000. But as there has been no funding rounds announced for that at this stage, we're kind of at a bit of a loss because it is part of our budget when you look through the budgeting in your strategic...
Well, that was my second question. My second question is...
Sorry, but our Ignite grant funding we are approving later today.
Well, it's on the agenda for today in relation to the
That's really
Ignite,
great, yeah.
That might be the next
I was on the
round
net
of
again on
Ignite.
Sunday and you know, on the site and looking through the announcements and there was nothing there. Yeah.
It's not open yet, but
Yeah.
appropriately, if the numbers are right, based on Nigel's presentation, is that you're indicating you're applying for the 150, therefore leaving from the total of the project 186. Are you indicating that you're asking council for the 36,000, or is it the 25,000?
The 25,000. Sorry, Nigel, go for it.
Yeah, so just to interject there, the opportunity exists to apply, we think, for about 150,000 from Arts Queensland. The current application is for 71. So what we're going to do is revamp the budget and the what we can ask for with additional activity and additional investment in the region, which would take us up to that higher figure. But the fact remains that we would still be looking for partnership funding, and that includes 25,000 from Gladstone Regional Council. Even if the budget goes up, because we can get more money from Arts Queensland, we're not asking for any more from GRC, but the fact is that when we've been hoping that the Ignite Fund would be underpinning this project, hence the idea of 25,000 input from Council. So I think what my suggestion would be, obviously we haven't made the application yet, but if we could at least have a letter of support indicating that the Ignite Fund is reopening and the applicant, Council is likely to look positively at an application from Movement Enterprises Lead, that would probably be enough for Arts Queensland to see the support as the application there is assessed.
Okay, thank you for that. And I suppose my final question pertinent to this particular example is a budget allocation. If that's where you're asking for money, is it appropriately, our Regional Arts Development Fund appropriately has funding available for delivery of arts projects, but it's for the development of our regional artists as well. So whether it's Ignite, whether it's RADIF or whether it's specific, and are you anticipating putting that request in writing to this council for that amount?
Once the Ignite program is announced, yes, we will be making an application to that. But the RADF fund traditionally does not fund $25,000 for a project. So therefore the RADF was not looked at in that regard. The RADF have supported it by giving us the nearly $9,000 to create this and provide the professional photographs of the site for the website. Whether or not the RADF has surplus funds, because I'm not sure if a round went through earlier this year, that could be available. But in discussions with Arts Queensland, they also said that they can provide, if RADF asks, they can provide for strategic development of projects. So 25K could come through, you know, you could apply, RADF could apply through Arts Queensland for that specific amount of money to support this program.
Thank you for that, because as Chair of the Regional Arts Development Fund, it's a partnership with the Queensland Government, so the Queensland Government is contributing to that as well. But you are right, I'm not quite sure whether the 25,000, and the reason for my question is I'm totally supportive of the project and the benefits that can come from it, but I wouldn't like to see you be rejected based on not having the sufficient amount in the budget to allocate for it. Thank you.
And yes, Glenn, so that's why I kind of we haven't included RADF in here, because of that fact that RADF really does not have that kind of funding amount available in any one round, because we don't really want to take money away from artists that might need other smaller works that usually get funded. So really don't want to kind of take from Peter to put for Paul, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, thank you, Lee. Thank you, Nigel.
Councillor Grady.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Lee and Nigel. Just a few things. I think next year has been extended to the Year of Indigenous as well, so I think that fits really well within the scope of what you're doing, which is fantastic. So my biggest concern probably about this project is this corner. Is this Barry's property north of Miriam?
Yes, so this is Barry Ross's property. So this is the northbound overtaking lane.
Yeah.
And it will be in this area here, right on that hill.
Yes, yeah.
And Barry has said to me, said to me that the sculptures can't be metal because cows eat metal.
Yeah. The thing that concerns me, Monto have just painted their silos on the Burnett Highway, and there's minions on the Capricorn Highway, and there is some safety issues about people trying to pull over to have a look at the sculpture and take photos. So that's my probably biggest concern on the highway there, people trying to pull up to take a photo or whatever else. So whether or not it can be somewhere where there's a pull-off area across the road.
There is across the road. There's some driveways. There's 2 driveways quite close to that site.
Right.
Where they can pull over.
Right, okay. Yeah, just that I thought, I'd just make you aware of that because I know the silos have only just been finished in the last month or so over in Monto, and they're having terrible trouble with traffic and people pulling up, and there's been a few accidents. So.
That's pretty high on the list of making sure that traffic control, is fine, is okay. And we're also talking to TMR about a right and left-hand turn lane into Moogle Road. So that we can safely get public in and out of the property. We did have 62 motorhomes in there a couple of years ago when there was absolutely no access onto that road. So TMR are kind of coming to the party a little bit now, thank God. Only because it's a council road.
Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Trevor?
Thank you for that. Mayor, it's no secret that I'm a major supporter of public art in this region. If I had my way, I'd be bringing some of the airport art into the main street of Gladstone, but that's not to be. In relation to Moogle Road, my principal concern in relation to that, having viewed the photographs, is that it would probably require an upgrade by the Gladstone Regional Council as part of any funding fiscal envelope, because from what I can see it's quite a narrow road and will require, if it proves popular, some ongoing maintenance and repair, particularly in the wet season, in relation to visitation by members of the public along that road to that intended destination. I have a little bit of a concern in relation to public funds going into private property. That's an issue for me, not a major obstacle, but it is something that I'll flag for you. And also one of the concerns I have is a safety one in relation to access to and egress from the Bruce Highway onto and off private property. My concern in relation to that is that at some point TMR may approach the private owners of the property and request an upgrade in relation to vehicular access on and off the Bruce Highway. Given that it is a popular road and given that lots of accidents happen on it. I would probably want to approach the funding in a different format rather than the amounts that are usually offered by the council, and that would be probably perhaps considering some match funding that we could look at from matching the funding from Arts Queensland. There was mention of a significant amount being required from this council to support the project, as well as a letter of support in a more detailed fashion. And I'm thinking, notwithstanding the infancy of the project, and I'd need to see some more detail on that, probably what would be required from this council would be some match funding, given the value historically and the sensitive nature of the project. I think to come under budget is only going to do it a disservice, and we should be full and frank in our discussions as to how much this is actually going to cost before any final decision by council is made. But I support the project. I like it. It has some issues, I believe, but I don't think they're insurmountable, and it would be, in my opinion, a great tourist attraction for this community, a great recognition of our Indigenous culture associated with this community, and an example of what the Gladstone Regional Council can do in partnership with good project proponents.
So when you're talking about the upgrade to the road, are you talking about the entrance to the road or the road itself? Because I've already asked TMR to provide us with a right and a left-hand turn lane off the Bruce Highway into there. And just recently they've provided bitumen right up to the first cattle grid, which is the entrance to the road. So they've bitumened that, which prior to that was not there. The issues that we have with TMR is that there's no stats on any accidents or problems at that part of the highway, and primarily because Mughal Road was not a road. It was privately owned up until about 3 years ago when council offered to take over that road, and they've graded it twice now. So that's the only issue that I have in terms with TMR. But in talking to the guys that were doing the upgrade to the entrance to the road just about a month or so ago, they think that most of the work has been done already for a left-hand turn lane, because if you know the second overtaking lane outside of Miriam Vale heading south finishes pretty much right at the entrance to that road. It's quite dangerous. So hence the reason for saying, can we please have a left-hand turn lane, because we're constantly telling people, please slow down on that overtaking lane, let everyone go past so that you've got no one coming up your bum or about to, smash into you as you slow down to enter into that road. So TMR would do that on their own bat at their own cost to put that left and right-hand turn lane in, surely, yeah? They wouldn't be asking you guys to fund
maybe
that,
not. Depends on if there's an intensification of the use, and if you're encouraging people to pull over, then the intensification of the use would necessarily reflect on the developer and or council.
Because TMR put a right and left-hand turn lane into a private entry road just south of the cemetery at Baroran, which I found really surprising. So that was a private road that's never used, and they put a right-hand, left-hand turn into that property there near the cemetery. So, yeah.
Councillor Goodluck has a question, and then councillors, we might wrap it up if that's all right.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Have you had any discussions with Council's planning department around this particular project? Or
No.
It might be something worthwhile. I think it sounds great, and congratulations on the work and effort that you guys have put in so far. But yeah, my probably two big concerns would be around the road and also your discussions with DTMR. So you probably need to get clarification from them, particularly what Councillor O'Grady raised as well around the if you're going to have public art features on the highway, people are going to want to pull over, and I'd anticipate that TMR would expect potentially the need to pay for some sort of facility that would allow that to happen in a safe manner. So there's probably a few things there that you need to clarify as a matter of urgency. But other than that, thank you for coming and showing the project. I have heard of it, but it's good to get a more in-depth understanding of it here today. So thank you.
Pleasure.
Thanks, councillors. Any other questions? All right. Sorry, Councillor
Sorry, Mr.
Grady.
Mayor, I was just wondering whether you'd be eligible for TEQ funding.
We've had discussions with TEQ, but because there's no history behind this particular event, they're not willing. Once the first year is over, and there are some stats around it, which we've got a full description of what we would do about the first event, then there would be discussions with TEQ, yeah. I've had discussions with TEQ about the site itself and the Indigenous importance of that site, but not about this particular project. They can't support it at this stage, yeah.
There's no story to be told on it just yet. When the story can be told, I've got no doubts they'll throw their weight of support behind it.
Yes, because we were talking to them about the Year of Indigenous Tourism and what we can do on the site in terms of Indigenous tourism for that site, given that it is a significant site of significance for the Gurang Gurang.
All right. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Nigel. We've obviously just got this one now. That was a great deputation. I think everyone has a better understanding of the project now. If it's possible, Lee, what we'll do is we'll just receive the deputation, and if you could put in writing what sort of support you'd like from council, and then we can respond to that.
I'll just hand, there's just 4 copies of the sculpture in Seawell, so you can see how they managed that event through Katoomba. Quite strict guidelines and very, very, very successful. Very successful.
Excellent. Thanks. Well, what we'll do, if we can put something in writing for us whenever you have time to say this is the sort of support we're looking from council in addition to the original letter of support, council will be able to consider that and we'll get back to you. But for now, I think we'll just receive the deputation, councillors, and move on with the agenda. Received by Councillor Goodluck, seconded by Councillor O'Grady. All in favour? That's carried. So thank you, Lee. Thank you, Nigel. And we'll move on to the rest of the agenda, which I'll have to be leaving shortly to go to Vietnam Vets Day. But thank you.
Thanks, Lee.
Okay, councillors, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is the confirmation of the minutes.
So moved, Mr Mayor.
Oh, okay, sorry. G2.1, which is the confirmation of the general meeting minutes for the 4th of August 2020, moved by Councillor Churchill, I think seconded by Councillor Hanson. Is that correct? Are they true and
yes,
correct?
Mr Mayor.
All in favour? That was quick. No business arising, obviously, out of those minutes? No, thank you, councillors. We'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is the officers' reports. And G3.0 is the monthly financial report for the period ending 28th of July 2020. And I'll hand over to Mark Holmes, the General Manager of Finance, Governance and Risk. Thank you, Mark.
Morning, Mayor and Councillors. This is your monthly financial report through to the end of July, and the report very much reflects, the infancy of the financial year. But just a couple of items that I'll call out prior to taking questions. It does reflect the raising and accrual of our rates levy that was generated right at the end of July. So we recognise that income, but we consequently now have a debtor recognised waiting to receive the rates accounts, and we're expecting those notices. Whilst they've been available online now for several weeks, we're expecting them to be hitting the post box this week. So we're hopeful of that. Our expenditure remains within budget at this point in time. There was with the timing to do with our accruals of our payroll. There's one pay period reflected in this, but we will see essentially 3 pay periods reflected in the next in your August statements. But everything remains on track from an operating expenditure perspective. With respect to CapEx, $2.8 million in actual expenditure through the month, so 4.3% of budget. You do have essentially 27% of your budget already committed from capital already in terms of orders that have been raised. Worth noting that whilst we're still preparing our financial statements for the 2019/20 financial year, we have fully accrued essentially all of our capital costs with relating to last year, and those costs have come in at around about $44 million. So once we've fully accrued those, and that's essentially in excess of what we had thought we had forecast. So we're expecting just to be under 41 million at 40.8. So we have come in just over with respect to our actual capex at that time. There's some graphs there that show your outstanding rates, and not surprisingly, as we've just raised that, essentially everything is showing as outstanding. So what you're seeing there is your outstanding rates probably gives you a profile of actually the rate base broken into your residential, commercial, industrial, and your other uses there. But happy to take questions.
Thank you. Questions, councillors? Councillor Churchill?
Oh, this is, thanks for that, quite a comprehensive report, greatly appreciated by you and your team, Mr General Manager. It's not relevant to your actual report, but and there's no sinister inference with this, but Queensland Treasury Corporation, QTC, and with this COVID and the changes that are, or the impact that it's having on budget, has there been any dialogue with Queensland Treasury Corporation by yourself in any way, shape or form regarding interest for the future, or regarding any likely changes that may be suggested, being thought of or imposed on local government from QTC?
I guess QTC aren't necessarily the organisation that will impose items on council, so they're our borrowers, our bankers, so we will enter into arrangements with them. Certainly during the earliest conversations we've had with QTC are in and around the availability of facilities such as our working capital facility and the like, should we need it. So I know QTC has done a lot of modelling across all local governments and recently presented the CQLGA. Haven't seen that report just yet. But I'm expecting that what we will see is will be the issues with respect to collection potentially. We're very fortunate, I think, in that we've got a fairly solid financial base and a good cash expenses cover, as demonstrated within the report. So I think we should be able to withstand an initial financial shock in that space. But QTC, where they would come in hand in an assistance, will be with things like a working capital facility. Our debt and our existing borrowing, they are fixed borrowings. So we are, and essentially we're committed to the interest costs that are applied against that debt.
Yeah, thanks for that. You've answered my second question, the fixed borrowing. Appreciate that.
Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Hanson?
Just a quick one through the Mayor. You mentioned that the rates notice will be in the post this week.
Yep, they've been.
We've had some problems, obviously, because we mailed them on the 11th, I think it was.
I'll let James Bentley, Manager of Revenue.
There's many people asking. Some people are dreading it, but there's many people asking when the rates notices will be in the mailbox.
Yes, indeed. The rates were posted ahead of time on the last Friday week, and so that's now coming up to 8 full business days that Australia Post has had them. We were expecting within 7 days. Today is actually I think the 7th day coming up now. So I would suspect if they would comply with their service standards and their service obligations, the notices should be in the letterbox today. They're in other capital cities. We've had many calls from Sydney, many calls from Brisbane, lots of BPayView registrations, so they're out there. Unfortunately, apparently they go up to Rockhampton first. Is that what happens?
Yes, that's correct.
So this is something for us to bear in mind. I know, obviously I'm new here, but with our current printer, they're based in South Australia. So it's coming from South Australia. And of course with COVID, which people are blaming everything for now, that might have contributed in some way to the delay. But I suppose the lesson is, we're expecting them to come today, the next couple of days, that's what I'm expecting. But the lesson is, if we continue with the current printer, and there's a tender coming up in the next year, we really have to give them 10 working days data. We have to give them 10 working days, Australia Post, 10 working days to send the mail. So this is why I'm looking forward to the future as well, to really emphasise online delivery, because I think it's just a rod for our own back relying on Australia Post.
Sorry, through the chair. Are they posted in South Australia? Or are they posted? Are they printed and sent up to here from South Australia?
No, they're posted in SA.
All right, so it's not just a simple operation of going from Gladstone to Rocky and back again. No.
No, it's,
And then you've got to worry about going through that other state, yeah.
but the good news is the issue date on the notice printed is the 18th. So today is the issue date. So whatever happens, if the notice is issued on the 18th formally, that actually, from memory, there's actually a 61-day time frame from the 18th to the due date. We've actually given them a day more, so I've factored in a little bit extra in there. So the team's been performing above capacity. They put in things early, so we've, in a sense, budgeted for that. But I think next time we have to give ourselves a bit more slack as well, cut ourselves a bit more of a buffer, because we just can't rely on Australia Post.
And the first time we've had the 10% for 60 days, which is giving people an extra 30 days to take advantage of the full 10%.
And I guess that's why they're getting a bit nervous, Mr Mayor, about the 60 days is becoming a factor as well, but you've explained that, that's good. I guess when we look at the printing of these notifications, we've looked at it before. I remember in past councils we've looked at bringing it back in more local so that we can get some indication, but I'm not sure whether we've got the capacity locally to do that yet, but I'm sure we'll be looking at that.
I've spoken to Toowoomba, and they've just really, this is the main reason, there was some financial considerations too, but they've just gone to a Queensland-based printer now for precisely that reason.
Councillor Goodluck, questions? Sorry, then Councillor O'Grady.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mark, just with the asset sustainability ratio, I noticed that it forecast in 21-22 to reach somewhere around 140%. We're currently sitting at 20% at the moment, and we're historically over the last few years between 40 and 50%. Is that obviously it's aspirational, is it a realistic?
It's just reflective of the works that we've got planned and whether they are essentially renewal type expenditure. So your asset sustainability recognises the amount of money you're spending on renewing your assets, and there'll be some kind of components of also upgrade that'll be a renewal as well, essentially divided by depreciation. So,
and whether or not you can delivering
is then a secondary component as well that impacts that as well. So certainly at the moment we actually are already for this financial year at 20%. So which shows we've probably been, most of that work that has been done has been of a renewal basis.
Thank you. And can I just clarify the budget? So if we reach a 100% capital works program, our budget's 57.9%.
From an asset sustainability ratio perspective, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll hand to Councillor O'Grady for a question, but I'm going to have to hand over to Deputy Mayor now. I will attend the Vietnam Veterans Day service. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question about the seniors discount. I've never applied for that before. So do you have to apply every year for the seniors discount, or once you've applied the first time, that just goes on every year? So,
yep. So we ask for an application upon when you initially become eligible for a pension remission, and we then validate that with Centrelink, and we validate that file each and every year. So generally you need to only apply on that one occasion, or if your circumstances change. So, but we do validate that file, each and every year through Centrelink.
Because we have to check that they're still eligible for the next financial year, so they get the discount for the subsequent year when we levy the rates.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I've just had a few seniors give me a ring, and for the discount.
Yeah. So they don't ask. There's no need if a pensioner has already applied previously. They don't need to apply again.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Moved by Councillor Muscat, seconded by Councillor Hanson. All those in favour? That's carried. Next item on the agenda is G/3.1, and that's Mark's again. So hand over to you, Mark.
Yep, so this item is with respect to the revision of our water standpipe policy. So it's been some time since we've actually revised our water standpipe policy, and so what this policy review has done is had a look at a lot of the feedback we've received with respect to that policy, essentially over the last 6 years since that policy first came into existence, and looked at amending that policy to ensure we actually make sure your policy really does provide the strategic direction that we set, but make sure that we also then enable to be more flexible in how we respond and operate our standpipes by putting those more operating conditions into our corporate standards and our terms and conditions. So that reflects those amendments, so that our fixed standpipes, they're located across the region, but this so applies to those, but also covers our metered standpipes. So we've got essentially 51 of those that are actually out in use in the community. Certainly was a subject of much debate and interest during certainly the second half of last year and earlier this year, when certainly the low rainfall, and that we've actually had a lot of people utilising our standpipes to be filling up and utilising water carters. So certainly does, depending on the conditions of the time, get a lot of use. But we've got Vicky Hankinson online, who's led this policy review, if there's any other questions that I can't answer for you.
Any questions to the officer councillors? Moved by Councillor Churchill.
Sorry, I had a question.
Yep. Councillor O'Grady.
Yeah, is there any need to purchase any more standpipes for the reason of the drought, or not?
I guess but I'm not. Vicky, can you answer that one? It's probably more of an operational question as to how many.
Yeah.
Yep.
At the moment, we do have a waiting list with 3 people on it for mobile standpipes.
Yep.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we've got that, Vicky. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. At the moment, we have about, I think Mark said 51. I think it was actually 60 we have in total. We reserve 1 standpipe for our short-term users, so that if somebody needs to fill a pool, or that there's 1 standpipe for short-term use. The other ones are out in the community currently on hire, and we have a waiting list with 3 people on it currently looking for mobile standpipes.
Yeah, the reason why I asked, that some people have asked me that on a waiting list, and I thought, I just wondered why there was a waiting list. So, yeah, I didn't realise they were utilised that well.
Yeah, and it very much depends on what activity is happening in the construction area. I guess with the government's latest scheme, whereby improvements, they've got some grant funding out for improvements to buildings and pools and those sort of things. Perhaps that's triggered an increase in use of wanting access to bulk water. I don't think that we have the waiting list for very long, but it is perhaps a budget consideration as to whether council wants to purchase additional mobile standpipes. But the waiting list is 3 people at the moment.
Councillor Muscat.
Thank you for that. So do fire brigades, they have their own standpipes, do they?
Yep, fire brigades access through their own essentially equipment, and so they've got their own standpipes and also connections into hydrants.
Thank you.
And they're actually not subject to this policy, so they've got as of right access to access for firefighting purposes.
Councillor Muscat.
Thank you, Councillor Goodluck. I've got a few comments and questions. But thank you. I wanted to thank you for having this done, before the hotter months come in. As you said, there's been a fair bit of discussion at the end of last year in relation to this, since a number of residents couldn't access the water through these methods because of they didn't have ABNs or insurance. So I know that the approach that we've taken here is to, I guess, take a lot of that operational stuff from the policy and then make the policy a lot more general, sort of to talk about our intent and what we want to do in relation to the standpipes and water supply for some of these areas. Now, I think that's a great approach. Now, I'm hoping that then we will have clear guidelines when it comes to the operational the operational side of it, because I remember at the time there was also a bit of confusion and maybe a little bit of a lack of education throughout the staff that provide access. So just want to note there that it will be interesting. Well, I would love to see a bit of an effort put into training the staff in the new policies, because they work very closely with the community, and there's really, they see each other all the time, and there's that will save a lot of, I guess, heartaches and conflict between those people. Now, I've been reading a lot of the feedback from the consultation that we done internally, and I'm assuming some of those things weren't actually translated into the new policy. I was just wanted to confirm, first of all, the locations as to where this policy applies to, because there's a few different nodes. Obviously, we have Beecher and Burua that now sit in the policy as places where we will not do these. And I wasn't sure why, such, specific need to be in the policy, while, in the future, we don't know what's going to happen when we can just leave that in the operational side. So if I can just confirm the locations, because there's also notes to recommendations down here in relation to Miriam Vale that say that, there's been feedback saying that it probably wouldn't be a good idea to leave the service in Miriam Vale, but I see that that's not been taken up in the policy.
Yeah, I guess, and Vicky might be able to provide more comments with respect to the actual locations, but in terms of the actual infrastructure required to actually provide those services, that's probably why you do actually have some of those restrictions.
Yeah.
So probably recognise, particularly in Miriam Vale, where we were from that water supply perspective, we were on a low supply alert. We've got a restriction in that area. Putting that extra demand on that network just wasn't something that we would be encouraging. Plus also then we've got additional costs, because that's actually a different infrastructure. We've got our own package treatment plant. It runs under its own operating constraints in that space. So we've just got to make sure we are taking into account the actual network constraints that are there. Beecher Burua actually is a trickle feed system. It doesn't actually run under mains pressure. So that would be why the Beecher Burua wouldn't necessarily be included in that, because it actually requires essentially that mains pressure to be filling up.
No, I completely understand that, but I was just wondering why those things need to sit in the policy and not as an operational decision.
Vicky, was there any discussion about that with the formation of the policy?
I guess it needed to be clear in relation to the Beecher Burua constant flow water supply scheme that Beecher Burua was specifically excluded from using mobile metered standpipes in that system, because the system is just not set up to be able to take large bulk water takes from the network without affecting the service to other people that access water from that system. So we wanted to make it clear that it was a council supported position that people were not to take water from the Beecher Burua constant flow water supply scheme, because it just wasn't capable of having those sort of takes taken from it. In relation to the fixed standpipe infrastructure, section 6.1 of the terms and conditions shows the locations of our current fixed standpipes, where people can fill trucks from the overhead infrastructure, and basically the mobile standpipes can be used anywhere within the other water supply networks.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not arguing with whether we should be putting pressure on that system, or if that system is not suitable for standpipes. I'm just, I guess, questioning why we have to put some of that stuff in the policy, but I guess you explain it. I see things like, for example, when we have 6.3 of the draft new policy, we have point 2 says applicants are not required to hold an Australian business number. I guess we put that in there because in the past that was one of the issues, but again, I don't see why we have to have that there, since it's actually, well, if we don't say that, it just doesn't happen. So I just find that I really appreciate the fact that we've done it really, really general, so we can then do have procedures or guidelines that sit in the at an operational level. But I think there's probably a couple of other things we could take from the policy, so it stays general as well. And then we are more flexible to deal with those operational matters as they come, including, I know that some of the systems might not fit or might not be able to sustain metered mobile standpipes, but it doesn't mean that something might not happen, you know, unexpectedly, and we just have to go that way. So I'm just trying to see if we can have this policy be a bit more flexible so we can deal with some of those late arriving issues, especially when it comes to water, which is such a sensitive and needed resource, and with the changes that we're seeing in the climate and things like that, that we don't have to be then restricted by a policy that is telling us some things that we can't change.
I think the policy is trying to achieve, in terms by including some of those items, do a little bit of public education as well, and making sure it's probably doing some of that communication out there and making sure that bit was visible. I think the other bit I think to remember is there probably is actually a relatively small number of users that do this. The real, we need to make sure we are protecting the integrity of our network and protecting the supply to our our 21,000 water consumers. So it tries to find a balance. And
I understand. I understand that. Well, I'm happy to keep a balance. I'm just saying that at the moment, I'm just kind of worried that things can change at the last minute, and then we'll be bound by not being able to do something because of a policy that has some specific items in there, which we could deal with at an operational level. So, and I wanted to ask you one more thing. The internal feedback says in here that the contract with the standpipe key supplier has expired. So, how could you elaborate on that and how that impacts on the service?
Yeah. So this at the moment, people access through essentially a key system. We've found that there's some limitations with respect to that, and there's other technologies that have now become available that actually make that. So we're probably looking at, we'll utilise the current infrastructure for the time being, but we are looking at utilising other more smarter technologies out there to put in place, so we'll be able to use those. So the key technology was good at the time. It's probably not up to date at the moment.
Yeah. I have got some feedback from a number of residents, and they mentioned that too, how there is other ways, obviously, other councils have implemented. So do we have any plans or any?
Yeah, I believe our teams are investigating. I apologise, I don't have the exact time frame on that, but I know they are investigating those opportunities.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? I did have one mark. I support the intent of stripping out the operational aspects of the policy and leaving it strategic. I just wanted to know what sort of mechanisms do you have in place that are going to ensure consistency? So obviously we've got a lot of flexibility under this policy compared to the previous one, but we still have to have, and it sort of goes a little bit to Councillor Muscat's point, I think, but we still have to have clarity and consistency in the way in which the policy is going to be applied across the region. So what mechanisms do we have in place to ensure that moving forward, so we don't just sort of have, you're good to go, you're not. Not that I'm saying we would do that, but that's what we potentially end up with.
So you've got that attachment 2 there, which is your terms and conditions, and that's essentially going to be the hymn book by which we're going out and make sure that we are, implementing the policy and make sure that we're doing that consistently. So those terms and conditions will apply universally across the network.
So that.
And there's a part of it that is actually almost a cultural piece as well. There's one, I can have this on paper, but as we've talked about, we make sure that our team is out there outworking that policy in line with both the policy and the terms and conditions.
Yeah, so just with regards to, I know there was one point there where the CEO can, make approvals and changes, which is great because we have that flexibility to support people, in urgent times when we need to. So, just as long as we're still maintaining that level of consistency. Yep. So the terms and conditions will govern how that operates. Yep. All right, thank you. We did have a mover from Councillor Churchill. Is there anyone who'd like to...
I'll move the officer's recommendation. I'm satisfied that the strategic content remains there, but please noting that the operational issues, and I understand exactly where you're coming from because we've all been inundated, especially in the height of drought, but the operational matters are to be dealt through the CEO and managed by the CEO. So I would also suggest that from the CEO's perspective in moving the motion, that the CEO would be fully versed on the requirements, especially during the height of drought, through the local disaster management group. But prepared to move it, Mr. Chair.
Seconded by Councillor O'Grady. Councillor Trevor.
And now we all know the rules, maybe we can refer the complainants to the appropriate people rather than getting involved in a process that can be easily dealt with by people who know what they're doing.
All right, we'll put the motion. All those in favour? That's carried. We'll move on to item G/3.2. So Councillor Muscat's just had to leave very briefly. Do we need to note that for the minutes?
I believe councillors need to request permission from the chair prior to leaving the meeting. So we probably do need to just document that, please. Yeah.
She did signal to me and advise the meeting prior that she'd have to leave briefly. So if we can just note that for the minutes, please.
The intent of me raising it is we're moving into a G3.2 standpipe hire fees and charges, which I do know that from a previous time, and Councillor Muscat rightfully was very active in this particular area based on feedback from residents and ratepayers. So we're dealing with, but anyway, in her absence, I'm sure we can deal with it, or alternatively seek from the chair that we break for morning tea.
I did note, though, Councillor, that Councillor Muscat advised that she had to leave at a specific time. Should I mention why? To move her car from the car park because she couldn't get a car in the so she's not fined. So she requested that of the Mayor before the meeting started. So I don't know how we handle that.
If I may, Mr.
Well, that's easily solved. You park your car park in the car park that's provided to us by council free of charge, where mine sits at this very moment, and that's why I'm sitting in this council meeting, which I'm obligated to do according to law.
Yeah, fair enough, Councillor. I'm just stating what the councillor stated.
Thank you, councillors. We might break for morning tea. We'll be back. I think we take, is it 10 minutes, 15 minutes, however long, and so we'll break the stream and we'll be back shortly. Thank you.
Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify.
The Gladstone region is often referred to as an industrial town, but it hosts much more than meets the eye. The wider region hosts a diverse and important range of natural environments. There are endangered terrestrial ecosystems and many threatened species of plants and animals, some of which can only be found here. The region's 150-kilometre coastline extends from Raglan Creek in the north to Baffle Creek in the south. There are over 254 square kilometres of wetland, most of which are valuable estuarine systems. These wetlands feature important seagrass meadows and mangrove systems, providing a natural storm surge protection. Parts of the coastline also serve as important turtle nesting sites. 55% of the region is covered by natural vegetation, with 16% of our land classified as nature, conservation, forestry and parkland, including national parks. These conserved lands and their surrounds provide vital habitat for the 64 threatened animal species living here. Gladstone Regional Council recognises our responsibility to protect and conserve biodiversity values. We strongly value our natural environment and appreciate the eco-services our environment provides to both our economy and community. And we're striving for sustainable growth through both our policies and plans. Every year, Council proudly participates in many environmental initiatives, partnering with community groups and enthusiastic volunteers. We also facilitate a volunteer program called Friends of Conservation, where volunteers work with our people to propagate plants as well as other conservation projects. We recognise climate change and the environmental and economic impacts this will bring to our region. We are one of 30 Queensland coastal councils now participating in the Our Coast, Our Future program. This program is addressing potential economic, environmental and social impacts climate change may bring, and will see the creation of a coastal hazard adaptation strategy to manage shoreline erosion, inundation of coastal areas, and give direction on the long-term management of the region's coastline. The diversity of the Gladstone region's natural environment contributes to its appeal as a destination to visit and enhances the quality of life for residents. Gladstone Regional Council will continue to develop strategies to preserve, conserve and enhance these natural settings for present and future generations.
Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify.
The Gladstone region is often referred to as an industrial town, but it hosts much more than meets the eye. The wider region hosts a diverse and important range of natural environments. There are endangered terrestrial ecosystems and many threatened species of plants and animals, some of which can only be found here. The region's 150-kilometre coastline extends from Raglan Creek in the north to Baffle Creek in the south. There are over 254 square kilometres of wetland, most of which are valuable estuarine systems. These wetlands feature important seagrass meadows and mangrove systems, providing a natural storm surge protection. Parts of the coastline also serve as important turtle nesting sites. 55% of the region is covered by natural vegetation, with 16% of our land classified as nature, conservation, forestry and parkland, including national parks. These conserved lands and their surrounds provide vital habitat for the 64 threatened animal species living here. Gladstone Regional Council recognises our responsibility to protect and conserve biodiversity values. We strongly value our natural environment and appreciate the eco-services our environment provides to both our economy and community. And we're striving for sustainable growth through both our policies and plans. Every year, Council proudly participates in many environmental initiatives, partnering with community groups and enthusiastic volunteers. We also facilitate a volunteer program called Friends of Conservation, where volunteers work with our people to propagate plants as well as other conservation projects. We recognise climate change and the environmental and economic impacts this will bring to our region. We are one of 30 Queensland coastal councils now participating in the Our Coast, Our Future program. This program is addressing potential economic, environmental and social impacts climate change may bring, and will see the creation of a coastal hazard adaptation strategy to manage shoreline erosion, inundation of coastal areas, and give direction on the long-term management of the region's coastline. The diversity of the Gladstone region's natural environment contributes to its appeal as a destination to visit and enhances the quality of life for residents. Gladstone Regional Council will continue to develop strategies to preserve, conserve and enhance these natural settings for present and future generations.
Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify.
The Gladstone region is often referred to as an industrial town, but it hosts much more than meets the eye. The wider region hosts a diverse and important range of natural environments. There are endangered terrestrial ecosystems and many threatened species of plants and animals, some of which can only be found here. The region's 150-kilometre coastline extends from Raglan Creek in the north to Baffle Creek in the south. There are over 254 square kilometres of wetland, most of which are valuable estuarine systems. These wetlands feature important seagrass meadows and mangrove systems, providing a natural storm surge protection. Parts of the coastline also serve as important turtle nesting sites. 55% of the region is covered by natural vegetation, with 16% of our land classified as nature, conservation, forestry and parkland, including national parks. These conserved lands and their surrounds provide vital habitat for the 64 threatened animal species living here. Gladstone Regional Council recognises our responsibility to protect and conserve biodiversity values. We strongly value our natural environment and appreciate the eco-services our environment provides to both our economy and community. And we're striving for sustainable growth through both our policies and plans. Every year, Council proudly participates in many environmental initiatives, partnering with community groups and enthusiastic volunteers. We also facilitate a volunteer program called Friends of Conservation, where volunteers work with our people to propagate plants as well as other conservation projects. We recognise climate change and the environmental and economic impacts this will bring to our region. We are one of 30 Queensland coastal councils now participating in the Our Coast, Our Future program. This program is addressing potential economic, environmental and social impacts climate change may bring, and will see the creation of a coastal hazard adaptation strategy to manage shoreline erosion, inundation of coastal areas, and give direction on the long-term management of the region's coastline. The diversity of the Gladstone region's natural environment contributes to its appeal as a destination to visit and enhances the quality of life for residents. Gladstone Regional Council will continue to develop strategies to preserve, conserve and enhance these natural settings for present and future generations. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community.
The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify.
The Gladstone region is often referred to as an industrial town, but it hosts much more than meets the eye. The wider region hosts a diverse and important range of natural environments. There are endangered terrestrial ecosystems and many threatened species of plants and animals, some of which can only be found here. The region's 150-kilometre coastline extends from Raglan Creek in the north to Baffle Creek in the south. There are over 254 square kilometres of wetland, most of which are valuable estuarine systems. These wetlands feature important seagrass meadows and mangrove systems, providing a natural storm surge protection. Parts of the coastline also serve as important turtle nesting sites. 55% of the region is covered by natural vegetation, with 16% of our land classified as nature, conservation, forestry and parkland, including national parks. These conserved lands and their surrounds provide vital habitat for the 64 threatened animal species living here. Gladstone Regional Council recognises our responsibility to protect and conserve biodiversity values. We strongly value our natural environment and appreciate the eco-services our environment provides to both our economy and community. And we're striving for sustainable growth through both our policies and plans. Every year, Council proudly participates in many environmental initiatives, partnering with community groups and enthusiastic volunteers. We also facilitate a volunteer program called Friends of Conservation, where volunteers work with our people to propagate plants as well as other conservation projects. We recognise climate change and the environmental and economic impacts this will bring to our region. We are one of 30 Queensland coastal councils now participating in the Our Coast, Our Future program. This program is addressing potential economic, environmental and social impacts climate change may bring, and will see the creation of a coastal hazard adaptation strategy to manage shoreline erosion, inundation of coastal areas, and give direction on the long-term management of the region's coastline. The diversity of the Gladstone region's natural environment contributes to its appeal as a destination to visit and enhances the quality of life for residents. Gladstone Regional Council will continue to develop strategies to preserve, conserve and enhance these natural settings for present and future generations.
Good morning, and we're back, and we'll move on with the agenda item G/3.2, Standpipe Hire Fees and Charges 2020-2021, and I'll hand over to the General Manager for Finance, Governance and Risk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Deputy Mayor, sorry. This item is just with respect to having a review of our adopted fees and charges for your for standpipes and their usage. And it was timely to look at those, given that I know we've only just adopted them with budget, but given that we've had a look at and revision of that policy, just making sure that these fees and charges were in alignment with the principles contained and the terms and conditions of those policies. So our fees and charges we can adopt from a legislative basis. We can adopt at any time during the year. And the other legislative thing to note is this is part of a commercial business. So we actually are, within our rights to actually get a rate of return on our on this activity, on this business activity. It's noted that our costs of running our business at the moment through the provision of these services gives essentially break even. It's going to be plus or minus dependent on water usage really, and at the moment we made a very slight margin on 2019-20. So there has been some changes proposed there, and they're largely wording based and taking into account some of the feedback we have received over the last 12 months. As we said, particularly when we're discussing the policy, given that there was that additional usage in this space, it certainly got a lot more customer feedback during that time. So we've taken that into account. We make sure that we recover the costs of the infrastructure. So with respect to a mobile standpipe, those things are, we issue those to commercial users, and we actually do basically ask for a bond at that stage. So, and that's basically held in trust, and we return that to the people at the end of that time. And the same with the other charges though are they don't go to trust. They actually are just general income, and there has been some changes there just with respect to making sure we're encouraging the behaviour with respect to people submitting readings and the like. So we've actually amended the policy to ensure and the other terms and conditions ensure that people can forward their readings in through cameras and send those through to our water team. But we need that information to billing. So we've actually got a charge in there and have amended that and made it clear about the provision of a penalty charge in that space if people haven't been able to do so. So there's some minor amendments there. They are really as much around wording as anything else. That there's not a lot of change there from a dollar perspective. But as we said, it really is a break-even activity. And if we were to look at making some other different amendments in this space, it's probably we're looking at subsidising something from somewhere else. So be it through your water access charge, or be it through other means.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions to the officer?
Yeah, I might just have one, Mark. I see in here that you had a penalty rate of $7.60 a day, and that's been taken out.
Yep. So we've actually replaced that in there, and you've essentially got a penalty charge there, and there's that. You've got the $92 there for a late submission. Of a reading. Yeah. So essentially, let's replace that.
I see
we've moved from the per day charge. We've had there was some issues with respect to that from a systems perspective.
Yep.
So we're just trying to, simplify it. So it's late.
Yeah. It wouldn't amount to a big deal anyway, no. I would imagine, no. And the other one is, I see your water rate hasn't changed. Is that taken into account any possible future increases in our water rate?
Yeah, so that takes into account the input costs of
okay, so you're happy with that from $4.40 and our rate's $1.83. Yep. That's all I have, thank you.
So Grady.
Thank you, Councillor. Good luck. I just had a question about the hire charge. So we don't charge an annual fee. Is that because that wouldn't be utilised? Is that one of the reasons why we haven't charged an annual fee? Because I worked it out, it's just under $3,000 for the annual fee.
Yeah, we have. I guess we charge a monthly fee, and we've offered that there, but we've now broken that into. Basically, those essentially a monthly fee, but we're also offering then short-term basis. So at the moment, if we haven't got an annual fee, if we wanted to, that is one of the options we could add in there. But at this stage, we're looking at utilising it on a per month basis, because recognising that, given that the use of these is somewhat periodic,
Yeah.
The annual usage of them is probably quite low.
Right, okay, yep, thank you.
And through you, Mr Deputy Mayor, as well, I've had a conversation with water, and an annual fee is definitely a possibility. It's just there'd be some configurations required to the current system that they're using to accommodate that calculation. Yeah. So that would be something that would be first very prominent in any review of whether or not we wanted to buy more standpipes, for instance, or upgrade the quality of standpipes, or get the latest, versions of standpipes. So that is functionality that's not currently inbuilt into the system, but it would be a part of any review that we'd perform.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
No other questions? I got a few, Mark, which you may have anticipated, but I note that the cost of one of these mobile standpipes is about $1,600 or $1,800, and our security bond is about that much. Yep. And you're not allowed to purchase one of these items, so we essentially have a monopolised market there. And I know that yourself and James and I met with one of our commercial operators around this subject many months ago. But I think a number of the issues that were raised in that meeting, I'm still not necessarily satisfied with yet. But I notice our monthly hire fees are the highest of all the councils. Some nearly triple our neighbouring councils, and even higher again than nearly 50% higher than Mackay. Our security bond is obviously the lowest, but perhaps, and I also take note of what you said about, we're operating at a break-even point, but maybe there's a way that we can adjust these costs, is there, where we're still, potentially operating at a break-even point, but we haven't got charges that are far and away higher than most others. Our per kilolitre charge is almost the highest, with the exception of Bundaberg. So that still is a concern to me. With the having to return the standpipe each month for the readouts, is there any way how does that work? Does the operators have to physically bring them into the thing, or are they able to take a photo and send it in?
So amendments to terms and conditions, and even the amendments to policy that we've made during COVID, you can submit via photo.
Yeah, so we'll maintain that moving forward. So that should eliminate most of the penalty fees, which is where that's sort of come from. Okay, so that's good. The other thing is, quite often some of these commercial operators are actually doing work on behalf of council at different times, at midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning, accessing these access points, and they're also flushing the system from time to time, which is potentially beneficial for us. So is there any way that we can make any adjustments to that monthly higher charge? Because I can understand the points made by some commercial operators to me that they could go and physically buy one of these items for $1,600 or $1,800, which they're not allowed to. They have to hire it from council. They have to give us a bond that covers the cost of that infrastructure, and on top of that, they've got to pay $244 per month hire, which is substantially higher, as we can see, than other neighbouring councils. So what are our options there? We take a loss, or is there another way that we can assess this?
You could take a loss. You can move stuff into an annual fee. I guess this, as I said, this is a commercial fee. Generally, and most of these people are commercial operators, so it actually is an input cost into the business that they provide. So, with respect to the cost of water, that's probably there's not much we can do that. We are, as we know, almost half that cost is actually the cost of the input cost of the water board. That's from our water supply. So when we're already at $2.20, almost with respect to water, which is the input cost from the water board. Then we've got to cover the cost of the actual usage of our network over and above that. So you could do any other split of those. But at the moment, I would have thought if you reduce those fees, you would actually be essentially relying on the water access charge to be subsidising that, given that we actually already are at that higher end when we do compare to our neighbours in that space. So if we do reduce those fees, I don't know whether adding another fee in there or trying to actually get that mix in another way is going to assist.
So is it just from the investigations, perhaps that Vicky or James or one of the teams done, is it just that these other councils have opted to accept that loss? Because
but I guess we've just done that. We probably haven't had that investigation discussion with respect to actually how they've determined it. We've done that look at review of their fees and charge, but it's also going to be dependent on the amount of use they're getting of those, the number of standpipes they have, the volume that's going through those, and the like. So that is all going to be an input into that.
Because that's where I empathise with commercial operators. Yep. Some of these businesses, they have to have this mobile standpipe because if they get the call on at 2 o'clock in the morning, or it might be 2 o'clock in the afternoon to go and do a particular job, they've got to have it to do the job. By the same token, they might not get a single call out in a month, and they've still got to then pay council that $244 hire fee, when in actual fact they've utilised, they haven't used the system. So I can see a point that they're making. I understand we've got to make a decision, and we always try and be that cost neutral perspective, but I'm seeing some disparities among our fees and charges compared with other councils there, which is...
Just relating to that point as well about usage, it all depends on how you define use. In my opinion, use relates to the ability to have it there to go, ready to go. You see, if we charge people, for instance, with their domestic waste management on usage, we'd have to have someone checked that they had presented their bins every week, but they still have to pay their domestic waste management charge whether or not they present their bin every week or not at all. So it's a matter of having the ability to use it. What you're paying for is certainty. It's like anything. If you're some type of worker who's on 24-hour call, you've got to have a car in the garage ready to go. I suppose it's that same type of analogy.
Yeah. And that's a valid point, James, although these operators are paying nearly 3 times the amount for that privilege as what some of our neighbours are paying. So I can...
True, that's true, but then again, maybe the neighbours would charge exactly the same if they were exactly the same as our LGA. So it's a matter of apples and oranges sometimes. It's in many cases, these type of comparisons are, there's a real reason, there's a real point to have them, but sometimes they can give impressions about the state of affairs or a level of infrastructure or a size of LGA that maybe detract from consideration of the really relevant points.
Well, I'd probably be more comfortable for myself if we could. Is it possible for us to do some of that? I'd like to understand why our charge is what it is when every other council on that list, we're nearly 3 times the amount of both of our direct neighbours, and we're 50% higher than Bundaberg. Sorry, Livingston's not a direct neighbour, but it's the next one across, obviously. So I'd like to understand why, so that when I get contacted by some of these operators, I can explain what those reasons are. I'm happy to, if we've got a justifiable reason, but I don't understand it, other than we're trying to reach that cost neutral position, which I support, but I'm not sure, these other councils, are they able to do it better than we are, or is it just a simple case that they've decided that they're not going to operate at that cost neutral perspective? And then as a council, we can decide, what path we want to take and then defend that decision. But I haven't got that information in front of me.
So this is based on achieving that cost neutral cost recovery. Yeah, so we probably haven't done that, as I said, that look as to an understanding as to whether they actually are making a loss on with respect to those, because that probably requires that in-depth probably analysis of their books at levels that we just can't get from being just a almost a face view type of inspection of their public accounts. So absolutely, you can do that. You can set an annual fee there that might help with respect to that. I don't think people are going to take that up because, and you could actually subsidise that. So there's actually, you might only recover that. Looking at Mackay, for instance, that actually looks a little bit more than the 12 months. It's an interesting charge because if I looked at the $180 per month there, times that by 12, that looks a little bit more than what the annual charge is. So there is some value there in certainty, as James pointed out, that these people have that. But if the view is that you want to have further review of this, your existing rates and fees and charges stand until they're replaced otherwise. So we can resolve not to make these amendments, and then bring back a further review if that's the desire. And that's what I'm hearing.
Councillor Muscat.
Thank you. So just clarifying the option 2, which is the officer's recommendation, the only thing that changes is that it eliminates the penalty rate per day fee. So that's, I guess, what we're doing. We're not changing anything. We're just eliminating one of these penalty fees.
Yeah, and what we are doing is being absolutely transparent and having the public discussion in and around how these fees are set, and what is the return that we're making on this, which is essentially showing that based on our current input costs, this is essentially a break-even fee. Should you choose to subsidise that in any way, then you will be making a loss of some sign of whatever magnitude you choose to.
So
through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, the only other change is, if you notice, currently there is a fixed standpipe key security bond, which is a bond that's charged for the standpipe key. Now, if you look at the recommendation, that's being changed to a non-refundable fixed standpipe key charge. So rather than being repayable, it more accurately reflects the expenses council incurs in obtaining the key and the administrative process of issuing keys.
Yeah, and we will see hopefully a different system being implemented at some stage. Not really.
Well, as I said, when we're discussing the policy, probably need that input from operations and others as to when that technology will be put into play, and that obviously does limit that. So
I guess what Councillor Goodluck is trying to understand is how is that we can't do it as well as other councils. However, we don't actually know what other councils are doing exactly, or whether they're taking a loss or
I don't know the cost of the infrastructure, where they've got it. I don't know the amount of usage they've got going through there. I don't know the number of users they're doing it. So as I said, we're trying to put this across our 51 users that are used on this space, and looked at the volume at which we've currently going through those standpipes.
Yeah. Because I'm comfortable with the fact that I guess we're just breaking even. We're not, I guess, discussing whether we want to make a loss or subsidise this activity. So I'll be happy to just maybe discuss it at another time, or just get a separate report or something in that respect. But I'm happy to move forward with this as it is at the moment, and maybe see if we can get a bit more information when it comes to if we're interested in understanding why our charges are higher. Would that be something?
Yep, that's something we can consider. Is there any other questions to the officer?
I could just add as well, when this report was being prepared, it wasn't really the place for any commentary on system functionality, possibilities of the future, how we can upgrade, what we can do to increase efficiencies. That would certainly have, I think, muddied the waters and given a false impression of the purpose of this report. So I agree, Councillor, that's a very good idea.
Is it worthwhile, Mark? I noticed in the report that we haven't had any external communication or consultation with stakeholders in this space. Is it worthwhile perhaps undertaking some of that type of work so that we can use it to inform a decision?
Yeah, absolutely. We have had some CSRs and some customer feedback, so we have taken that into account and noted that in the report. But yeah, we absolutely can go further and wider in that space.
So I would feel more comfortable if we undertook, noting that there's not necessarily a great change, or perhaps is it possible to adopt the officer's recommendation and then undertake that work and bring it back for a future meeting, because I still find it hard to justify. We've got a number of these operators that are out there and they're trying to, give jobs and employ apprentices, and they're doing it tough at the same time, and it makes it hard for me to be able to justify why our costs are structured the way they're costs in this particular case. So I just need that justification, and/or give the council the opportunity to take all that information into consideration and potentially make a different decision. But is there any further questions to the officer?
I might just have one. Just trying to, looking at this figure here where you've got the cost of 51 standpipes, which is the access charge of 80mm connection. It's just under $400,000. Can you explain that one? What's made up of that?
Yeah, so the 80mm, so essentially what we're looking is under, when we're setting our access charges for the Lake Wonga scheme, so it's essentially a function of metre size. Yep. So we're saying to service a standpipe, you essentially need a 80mm service. So what it's trying to do is actually look at that. Well, that's the access charge in lieu of that.
For 51 standpipes, that works out to $7,840 per pipe.
That is the yearly access charge.
Right.
If you have an 80mm service at your factory, that is the service charge you will pay. Right. So it's equalised. And that is actually a cost to council. Yes, yes, that's part of the cost of our infrastructure.
Right. Yep. Okay.
Yep. So that's part. Essentially, it's reflecting that fixed cost component that essentially is in your water access charge.
And that's why when you look at, just say for argument's sake, somebody has a standpipe for a year. Based on a monthly charge, they pay $3,000 just in hire fees. Now that's not even half of what I would pay in my service fee if I had a factory and I had an 80mm connection.
If I can
so where do we make the rest of? Where do we include funding for the balance of the infrastructure, and that is in the higher water charge per kilolitre?
If I can just counter that though, and it's a valid point, but the counter argument to that is. My understanding is every one of those 51 standpipes, council is required by law to have those connections there for use by emergency services such as fire brigades in the event that they need to access those points. So if every one of those operators were to pull out tomorrow and say we're not going to access, we're not going to hire your mobile equipment, and we're just going to stop operations, which obviously is not realistic, but let's hypothetically say that was going to happen, council would be funding the maintenance and making sure those access points are up to standard for use by emergency services, regardless of the revenue that we'd be attaining as a result of that commercial fee. I understand the point that we're trying to, the commercial benefits, which was noted in the report. But the reality is we've got an obligation to keep these access points up to A1, irrespective of what money's coming in through them. Yeah, so and in some ways, these operators, when they access those points, they're flushing the systems out. They're providing a small benefit in that respect anyway.
So if you weren't getting this income from these standpipe, it would form part of the maintenance of those points would be part of our network costs and would be and is included in our essentially determination of your access charge. So at the moment, this actually comes off in determination of that. So essentially what you're saying is we won't have this revenue. It just goes through as essentially an increase in the amount of that we've got to try and recover from the other users.
So that is that substantially depreciation?
It covers depreciation, but also maintenance of the whole network as a whole, and, and maintenance of our fire hydrants and inspection points, everything.
So that cost is there whether they're used or not?
That's right.
Yep.
Just if I could add as well, if a fixed standpipe, a standpipe hirer, to actually pay as much per annum as someone who has a factory and has an 80 mil connection, to pay that service charge, they'd have to use 2,163 kilolitres of water, because part of that infrastructure charge that we recoup is factored into the water consumption. Yep. So that was a substantial usage just to get to the point of what I'd be paying if I have a factory down in, Kalamunda or somewhere.
I suppose I'm looking for a motion, councillors. Councillor Trevor.
Thanks, Deputy. I just wanted, for the purpose of clarification, essentially your office's recommendation will lead to a cost-net neutral basis, won't it? Is that the case? And we don't know whether the other councils are operating at a net profit or net loss.
No.
But in all probability, one would anticipate, based on the evidence, that they're probably carrying a loss in order to facilitate delivery of this service and perhaps a community of benefit associated with it. Would you agree with that proposition?
On the surface, it would appear, but I can't make that. That is a definitive statement. But
it would be a value judgment, because it would depend on obviously the importance they paid for their own constituency as to whether or not that should be subsidised in some way. So each one would be a law unto itself, I suppose.
Thank you, Deputy. I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Chris Cameron. If there's no further questions, we'll put the motion. All in favour? Those against? That's carried. We'll move on to Gladstone Airport Corporation Statement of Corporate Intent, item G/3.3, and I believe that's yours as well, Mark.
Yep, having a run. So this is the Statement of Corporate Intent for the 20/21 financial year for the Gladstone Airport Corporation that's attached for your consideration. Gives an idea of the activities of the airport, what they're forecasting with respect to to be their financial position, but also to set some of the ground rules for engagement between both council as owner and the airport as airport corporation as operator of that asset on council's behalf. There has been some amendments proposed by officers with respect to the SCI that's been put forward by GAC, and that's primarily with respect to, whilst in the document it provides a forecast of capital expenditure, it doesn't necessarily do the same for OPEX. So to ensure we've got alignment there into our long-term financial forecasts, requesting that information comes through twice a year this year. I would think and that's more because of the uncertainty associated with the current operating environment for the airport, given the impacts of COVID on the airline industry. I would have thought that if essentially under normal conditions that we could actually have that only once a year, but just given the recognising the abnormal circumstance in which we are. There was also a statement included in the proposed SCI with respect to what, when and how council can decide matters with respect to the airport corporation, and I guess we've actually just made an amendment there and recommend an amendment that it actually is up to council to decide whether an issue is discussed at a closed meeting of council or not with respect to that. Further, and this is a matter just for the airport's determination of its compliance with the regulations that it needs to comply with in terms of its competitive neutrality fee. That is essentially the commercial benefit that it may or may not have received with respect to borrowing. So there's a competitive neutrality fee that's been applied at the rate of 1.5% on top of borrowing rates, recognising the benefits of borrowing as essentially local government or local authority compared to what they would have done if they were to go out as a commercial entity on their own in the open market. Now, there's been the GAC's done a lot of work in this space. Their recommendation is they're looking at around about a 0.58% CNF to apply from the 2020/21 financial year. Looking at that report, one thing I think it is worth noting is that given that the borrowing that it relates to the airport and is being recovered under the shareholder loan agreement is related to project-specific financing, that it's recommended that CNF be fixed for the life of the loan. And that's in line with what the determination is from BDO and their recommendation as well.
Sorry, Mark, I threw the chair. Just going back to that competitive neutrality, I'm just trying to get my head around how that works. So, in essence, the borrowings that come through that they've got ready currently are borrowed through council. Council have borrowed that money and at a fixed rate, because you were saying that before, and then they want to have that reduced down.
Yeah. So the competitive neutrality fee is there recognised. So it's in compliance with national competition principles. All commercial businesses of local government, state government, and federal government, if there is a competitive advantage to be gained through, in this case, borrowing, you actually are required to recognise that as part of your cost base. Now, because we are the owner of the business, they need to recognise and pay that to the owner. So the competitive neutrality fee is essentially a payment from the entity to the owner. But it is actually, it's its absolute discretion of GAC as to what that rate is, because they need to make sure they pass audit and they pass, get the ticks of approval in that space. I guess what we're saying in that space is, yes, it's up to you to approve that, but absolutely the borrowing that was undertaken in this case was a project-specific financing to upgrade the facility and do the terminal works. Therefore, it's project-specific and should be fixed for the life of the loan.
Councillor Muscat.
Which I guess, obviously, they're now proposing that fee, it's lower. I have read the letter from the consultant, and I can see what you're saying. It is a project-related loan, so just at the same time, I see how the fact that the airport is owned by local government also, for example, in the last 6 months, has brought the airport some disadvantages when it came to some of the payments, like JobKeeper or things like that. And so at the end of the day, we can't really do anything. We can just recommend that they adopt a fixed fee for the life of the loan. So it will be up to them.
I guess it's more a recommendation to recognise that it is truly a board decision. It's more just noting that, to me, that it was called out in the communication that came with the SCI. So I think we had an obligation to respond and advise of that.
In terms of actual cost and dollar figures, what would that entail?
It's around about $1 million that loan at the 1.5. So it is a saving to the airport to essentially cut that in a third. But that's but it is purely recognising the savings on that borrowing. So instead of the 6% that would have been currently borrowed at, they would have been at about 7.5%. What they're saying is that their best estimates is that we're only essentially that 0.58% margin.
Just acknowledge Mayor Matt and hand him back the chair.
Councillor Goodluck, sorry, I missed most of what's happened with that item.
No, it's just, may I just comment just briefly? It was just a process by the board to ascertain whether the organisation was considered to be a regulated government-owned corporation or a non-regulated government-owned corporation. There is a difference there, I think, in...
It's established under the Local Government Beneficial Enterprise Regulation, which is actually neither of any of those. So
okay. So that's what makes it a bit more difficult.
Correct.
But, we were just trying to ascertain, with interest rates fluctuating, as to what would our stand be in looking at some interest rate dropping for that reason. Also, if the 5.058% was accepted, it's not going to be, obviously, by the organisation, but that extra money would go into excess cash for a dividend for the council. So the council would still get it.
Yeah. It's part of the net operating position.
But I'm probably sure the reasoning is to have the competitive neutrality fee in the first instance is to get that money on cash flow situation through the year.
The competitive neutrality fee really is just a matter of compliance with legislation, and it really is a matter for GAC. As GRC as owner, it's more about recognising, yes, that's treated as an expense. Yes, we receive the full amount of that payment as owner, but really, and that's why we look at that financial and resource perspective, we actually just take that as one of the inputs into looking at what is our net cash position with respect to this.
Yeah, and I guess the airport board wanted to look at it to understand exactly what they could and couldn't do with regard to that fee and the percentage.
Absolutely.
Councillors, any other questions? Councillor, no? Councillor Muscat.
I just had a really quick one. Sorry, I might have missed it, but it says in here that, that you will ask for the following amendments, and the second part is a strategic risk register to be provided on a minimum on an annual basis. Yep. I thought that was that's in the corporate statement of corporate intent.
Yeah, so it's recognised to reinforcing them to actually receive that. Yeah.
So we haven't received that.
And it's calling it out specifically in the document. Yep.
Because I couldn't see it in the documentation attached.
No, it wasn't.
To it.
That's why we've actually asked for it.
I see. Okay, I understand. I wasn't sure because it's quite clearly stated that the statement of intent, the corporate statement of corporate intent, had that list as the strategic risk register was one of the attachments, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Churchill.
Mr Mayor, I'm prepared to move the recommendation. I suppose in what has been indicated in point number 2 is probably just to flow on from my question much earlier in this council meeting when I asked about Queensland Treasury Corporation, and your response is the same line. It's a fixed one. So we need to applaud the Airport Corporation Board for at least looking at some ways that they may be able to perhaps remain within budget, but also constantly on the alert that there may be some adjustments post-COVID. But I'm prepared to move the recommendation.
Thank you. Move Councillor Churchill. I believe second Councillor Trevor, or as a question?
Thank you, Mayor. Mark, I just had a issue of clarification in relation to your recommendation 1B, Appendix 3, Section 6, to reflect council as the decision maker in relation to the matters considered, etc. Was it the case that you were saying in relation to that part of your recommendation that we can go out of general into confidential to discuss confidential matters relating to GAC?
It was about that part of the appendix basically was the airport was requesting that all matters be considered closed, including the SCI. The reality is council it's a decision for council as to what it can and its own legislative constraints, given that we are going to have more constraints about what we can and can't have discussed at meetings that are closed. And given that council actually does, this is actually the budget for the airport, and we actually just, council actually resolves its budget in open.
Yes.
So,
Which was going to lead me to my next question, which you've already alerted to, and that was, will that part of the recommendation conflict with the new amendments, which I've only had a cursory look at, Tanya. I'll look at it more closely on the 11th of October, the day before they come in. But whether that part of the officer's recommendation conflicts with the new amendments that are coming into law on the 12th.
I don't believe it does, and the council would make that decision in accordance with the legislation.
That's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And Councillor Branthwaite, was there a question, or were you seconding the motion? Okay, thank you. So I move Councillor Churchill, seconded Councillor Branthwaite. Have we accept the officer's recommendation? All in favour? The motion's carried. Thank you, councillors. The next item on the agenda is item G 3.4. Which is the adoption of the Gladstone Region Show Holiday for 2021. Hand back to the General Manager of Finance, Governance, Risk. Show holidays, I didn't know they came into your portfolio, Mark. Well done.
No, I didn't. Sorry, my apologies. I thought I was going to get a seat on the bench. This report is really about considering we need to advise the state each and every year of our show holiday and whether we propose to adopt a date for next year that's either in alignment with the conditions that are set there, or alternatively set another one. So we've previously been adopting a Monday in August that aligns with the essentially the Brisbane ECA. And that was the case for only Monday a week ago. So the recommendation here is to basically align the next show holiday in 2021 to that same event.
Thank you. Questions, councillors? If not, I'll have a mover, please. Move Councillor O'Grady, seconded Councillor Branthwaite. All in favour? Motion is carried. For those listening on live stream, the Gladstone Region public holiday for 2021 will be Monday the 9th of August, subject to the state approving that, but I can't see why they wouldn't. Next item on the agenda is G 3.5. We'll bring the General Manager of Customer Experience to the table. It's a development application for a material change of use for premises for a high impact industry and environmental relevant activity, ERA, located at 14 French Street, South Gladstone. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you very much. This report considers an application for high impact industry and environmentally relevant activity on a site where there's been low impact industrial use for the last 8 years. The application seeks a development permit to support a diversification of the current business. The application for the material change of use will reuse existing infrastructure, adding 2 storage tanks and some additional heavy vehicle parking. A recommendation to you is for approval. While zoned as low impact industrial, considerations of the conflicts in the scheme as well as community concerns are addressed in the relevant conditions that would accompany your approval. Helen Robertson's here to answer any detailed questions.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Helen. Questions to the officer, please. Thank you, Councillor Branthwaite.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I've just written some notes down here relating to it. There's obviously potential for looking at the proposal, potential for significant impacts, and it refers to odour. What sort of odour are we looking at? Odour, aerosol, particulate, smoke, and what sort of things are we looking at there?
Yes, all elements that might be relevant to that proposal. So there was a specialist report that was submitted accompanying the application that addressed those issues.
Yeah, okay. The other note I've got here is actually the reuse of the existing 26 car parking spaces. Now, obviously, are they not using those spaces now? Where would their staff park? And so forth. That's the sort of questions that come to mind.
As Mark indicated, it's basically a repurpose of the exact same use. So it's effectively a minor increase in what they're already doing on site. So it takes into consideration the existing operation on site. So it's not that many parks in addition to what they're already doing. That's the total amount.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, thanks for that. Through you, Mark, to Helen, thank you for a very comprehensive report and the supporting documents. My question is more, I suppose, from your professional understanding of this site and the operations as well, as Veolia have been operating for 8 years, which you've clearly articulated. In your professional opinion, do you have any knowledge or any records or any understanding or knowledge that there may have been a breach or non-compliance of any of their operational conditions that have been put in place as a result of the low impact?
No, there hasn't been that I'm aware of. That being said, the state government looks after the ERA element, so our council ERA team don't deal with this particular site. It's actually a state agency that looks after that. But from our records, there was nothing that had been a reported incident.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? No. Can I have a mover for an officer's recommendation on alternative, please? Councillor Branthwaite, you happy to move the officer's recommendation? Thank you. Moved. Seconded, Councillor Hanson. I put the motion. All in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you. We'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is G 3.6. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Mark. Digital planning specialised supplier, General Manager Operations, John Tumbers, will be here shortly. Yeah, pretty good. Thank you, John. We're up to G 3.6, which is the specialised supplier for digital planning.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and good morning, councillors. This one's for a specialist supplier, and it's for a software provider that provides software for our primary and successful virtual neighbourhood centre and an engagement platform. It's something we've already started and had some success with, and I'll hand over to Kylie shortly to talk around that. With that success, we'd actually like to now extend the use of that platform at an annual cost of $35,000 per year. But I'll hand over to Kylie to explain the virtues of that system.
Thank you, John. Councillors, Mayor, CEO, we constantly use our conversations platform for our online community engagement. Some of those engagements recently include the Agnes Water Car Park. We also use it for the Cassie Lives skate park, and it really does give the community an opportunity to genuinely input from an online perspective. This platform was also used to build our virtual neighbourhood centre when we were restricted for community contact. So it is a valuable tool for council. It's been embedded for around 12 months now, and there's been a significant amount of work conducted by the engagement and partnerships team and the brand and communications team to get this functioning well. The relationship and service provided by Harvest has been exemplary. We are involved in a lot of product development to make sure that the platform continues to improve. So I definitely support the recommendation.
Thank you, Kylie. Questions to the managers, please. Councillor Hanson.
Just a couple through you, Mr Mayor. Harvest, Melbourne company, how specialised are they, and how many other groups could do the same thing? I know that they've been with us, and and they've done the right thing and everything like that. But we've got to look at impartiality when we look at contracts. And obviously the question is, can it be done locally? Probably not. I don't know, but can it be done locally?
No, Councillor Hanson, not easily. It would have to be developed from scratch from a software developer, which I'm unsure we have those resources here. Significant exploration occurred last year initially, so we did consult with several providers and looked at their services. The online consultation platforms are a specialised service, I guess, so we did do a lot of research initially to ensure that we were targeting the right supplier.
That sort of half answers my second question. they've been engaged for over a year, and the figures that you gave us in hits and whatever, how does that compare? How do those statistics, Mayor, match with performances of other companies? And how do I know, how can I judge and compare those sort of statistics with anything else that's around?
So those statistics, Councillor Hanson, relate to the interaction and engagement with the community. So that's really dependent on the content and the interest from the content on the platform and the interest by the community. So we are working very hard to continue to, I guess, embed Conversations platform within the community and as a tool of our engagement portfolio.
I guess what I was saying, we haven't looked at any other councils and what their figures are in this regard and what we should be attaining, that's all.
Sorry, Councillor Hanson, I meant the actual platform doesn't attract the hits to the platform. The actual software doesn't do that. It's the content on the actual platform.
Thank you, being a computer illiterate.
You, Councillor Branthwaite.
Thanks, Matt. Look, obviously, it's like any website, it needs to be driven. It needs to be driven by all of us to get people to log on and have a look and see what's going on and promote the thing. I just wanted a couple of definitions of what you've got in here for your figures as far as contributions and contributors. So one would think one would relate to the other, but there's quite a big difference in numbers that we're talking about. We're talking 876 contributors, and the contributions are 2,000, basically 2,100. So what is it? What makes up a contribution?
So if I was a contributor, I would have a log on to that platform, and I may contribute to different projects 7 or 8 times over the course of that year.
Right. So what about a follower? Then a follower's not a contributor?
No, it's not. So the other benefit of this platform, we also use this to inform the community on the progress of our major projects. So things like Phillip Street and the Boyne-Tanham Aquatic Centre, you can follow those projects and get information, regular information as it updates.
Yeah, so then you've got another one that's got follows and followers. So it's nearly like internet jargon to me, but it's like click-throughs, I suppose. But yeah, I think it's one of those things that will probably grow in the future the more each one of us, and not just on council here, but right through the whole region, actually, access that system. Thank you.
Councillor Goodluck.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a great initiative, and particularly given COVID, but even before that, moving to online and giving people right across our 10,000 square kilometres of our region the greater opportunity to have input and communication and consultation and collaboration with council. So it's a great thing. It's a budgeted item, and I'm happy to move the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Move Councillor Goodluck. Seconder, please. Councillor Muscat. Any other questions? No, I'll put the motion. All in favour? That's carried. Thank you, team. We'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is G3.7. We had a couple of conflict of interest in this one, which is Community Investment Program, Ignite Advance Application. Councillor Trevor was leaving the room, and Councillor Hanson was leaving the room, and Councillor Branthwaite was staying.
Mayor, is there any consideration of splitting the matters to exclude the two that myself and Councillor Hanson are involved in and dealing with the others while we're present in the room?
Absolutely, we can do that. So let me just... would like to stay, I'm happy to split it for Councillor Trevor, and you would you? It's your choice. Okay. Yeah. So sorry, I'll have to go back and remember what your Little Athletics and what was. Oh, of course. All right. What we'll do is we'll deal with all items. Thank you, Kylie, except for Little Athletics, and also Gladstone Community Linking Agency, and we'll deal with those separately. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councillors, CEO, and those online. The report that I am presenting for you today is the recommendation for our community celebration funding. We have, over the past 6 months, we've really had a restriction around events due to what we're experiencing with COVID. So it's really great to see the community re-engaging with us and being able to fund their events through the Community Celebration Fund. We had 11 applications for this round, and they have been received and assessed in line with Council's community investment policy. And I've got Emily Costello here with me today. She's our Community Investment Officer, for those who haven't yet met Emily. The applications have been assessed using Council's assessment matrix with a panel that consisted of 4 senior officers and 1 member of the exec team as per our policy. 10 of the 11 applications have been recommended for funding as per the recommendation by the panel. The application not recommended to be funded was assessed by the panel at great length. That application was the Harbour City BMX Club. They submitted an application for an event in June 2020 that didn't go ahead. We did liaise with the president of the Harbour City BMX Club to reopen their application and invited them to submit again for this round. Unfortunately, at that time we did suggest that additional information was put into that application because it was a larger event that the club was undertaking. Unfortunately, in assessing the application, there was little information with respect to the budget, the event objectives, the economic impact, the local business engagement and the community need and interest. So due to that fact, the panel couldn't recommend an investment of community funds for that particular event. With respect to community education and making it easy for our community to apply for our fund, we do conduct regular education roadshows across the region, and we've also developed an online toolkit to really support the community in applying for the fund. With respect to the 10 successful applications, sponsorship agreements will be put in place for all of those, addressing event cancellations due to COVID, and all applications have submitted their COVID safe plans. I invite any questions from councillors.
Thank you. Before we take questions, I'll just put a motion for procedural matter to split the motion. So I'll split it into 3. So we'll split it so all items, with the exception of Little Athletics, and then with the exception of Community Linking Agency. Can I have a mover that we split that, please? Thank you, Councillor Goodluck. Seconded, Councillor Churchill. All in favour? This motion is carried. So we'll questions regarding all but Little Athletics and Community Linking Agency first. Councillor Muscat.
Thanks. Thank you, Kylie. I just wanted to ask a quick question. You mentioned that how we had the roadshow in which we undertook all the information, community education, I guess, exercise. I've been to a few of them. We did, I don't know, probably 8 or 9 or something like that. So that was really good. Have you noticed an improvement in the applications that we're receiving due to the exercises that we've done?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. The organisations that have attended those roadshows have definitely shown that the information that we brought out to the community has definitely benefited them. There has been.
Thank you, Councillor Churchill. Then Councillor Brent.
Thanks for that, Mayor Matt. I suppose also for the purposes of those online looking at the agenda, is that you indicated there in your report there was 18 applications, your panel assessed 11.
That's correct.
And obviously on the agenda item it showed the Calliope Rodeo Association, which was 12. Yes. And then in the meantime, I know there was an email circulated indicating that that they have withdrawn, albeit cancelled as such, so that's understandable.
Yes.
And I know I got response back from some officers in my request. It's really just now that there was 18 and there's 7 have withdrawn. Yes. They've withdrawn. Can I just, were they all withdrawn because of COVID?
Majority were withdrawn due to COVID compliance concerns. The other situation is that these applications were received during a funding round that was open in January and February of this year, which was then assessment of these applications was placed on hold. So the applications that remained valid and current have been now assessed as a priority in this particular presentation today. So some of those are no longer valid events, or they did not shift the date. There's been a number of reasons why they may have pulled out, and COVID being the predominant one.
Yeah, thank you for that, Emily. And I suppose that's a segue for my question in relation to the Calliope Rodeo Association, in the fact that they've cancelled the one that they had planned. But what if they, or any of the other ones, now decide that they'll proceed with the event, I shouldn't say post-COVID, because I don't think that's ever going to exist, is it, post-COVID? Or more so when the restrictions or the organisations allow themselves to be able to deliver such an important event. And I do know that as all of us would know, that the Calliope Rodeo Association are always very keen to do a major rodeo on Australia Day, be it. And if they've got plans for that, is it likely that their application, even though they've withdrawn, or would they have to reapply if there's another round? Just to understand, so that those that are listening in would appreciate what the process is.
Thank you, Councillor Churchill. There are other funding rounds that will open this year. So September is another opening for our funding rounds for community celebration. That said, the policy doesn't restrict council for assessing applications on their merit. So if we were to receive an application that we believed we should support out of round, we do have the opportunity to bring it to council for a decision.
Lovely, thank you for that.
Councillor Branthwaite, then Councillor Goodluck.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's really nice to see, you know, like I was part of the MEET program for many years, and it's nice to be able to facilitate and watch events grow and grow in professionalism and that sort of thing. Previously, I'd obviously been quite favourable towards the likes of BMX, especially when their dreams of holding national championships, and here we've got the likes of the Queensland Country Championships that obviously they haven't met the criteria that has been set out, but it would bring an incredible amount of overnight stays and business to our region. Are you guys working with the BMX side of things so they can reapply for the next round?
I'm happy to accept another application from BMX.
Cool.
They really do need to provide the information that we need to assess the application on its merit.
Have they been, like in the past years, we've obviously worked with Krista Horrocks as far as upskilling the likes of BMX or any other organisation that wants to apply for funding and further their event. Is that program still on offer, or is it,
Sorry, the education campaign.
Yeah, with Krista, or not necessarily Krista, but...
Yeah, we haven't programmed it for this year. I guess we are in a bit of a unique situation, but we do regularly do, Emily does do education roadshows around how to complete applications and does provide advice. What council can't do is write applications for applicants. That's not in our service remit. I'd really like to see a completed application from BMX. I agree with you. I think that it does have potential to bring economic stimulus to Gladstone. I think it's great. However, as officers, we have a responsibility to assess based on the application that we have received. And unfortunately, there just wasn't enough information in that to be able to make a recommendation to support it.
Good, thank you very much.
Well, just a comment on that, Councillor Branthwaite. What we don't want to see, I suppose, is that our officers being placed in a position of, be it conflict of interest or material interest, as we've seen declared by ourselves around this table, that if they, and I understand exactly where you're coming from, is trying to encourage them to teach them to fish or fish for them, but at this particular stage, if our officers, and perhaps as a question to the Madam CEO, if our officers are involved in helping them compile an application, they wouldn't be able to assess the application.
Yeah.
Or would they?
No, I'd agree with you.
I don't know. Yeah.
It becomes quite challenging, that area. But.
And we're digressing a little bit. so we might just go to Councillor Goodluck.
Well, I didn't think I was digressing. I think, in fact, Councillor Branthwaite was trying to indicate, which I rightfully support, is...
Point of order, Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, I knew that would be coming, Councillor Goodluck. That's your first for this one.
And thank you, Councillor Goodluck. Thanks to you. All right, I'm just trying to keep it moving. I know where everyone's coming from, so Councillor Goodluck had a question.
You got me last week, Councillor Churchill. I had to get one back on you. No, I'm happy to move the motion, the officer's recommendation, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
It's not the officer's recommendation exactly, but it's with the exception of Little Athletics and Community Linking Agency. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, if you'd accept my seconder through Councillor Goodluck.
Absolutely. Thank you. Put the motion. All in favour? That motion is carried. We'll now move to the second part of that item, which is dealing with Little Athletics. Councillor Hanson, would you like to stay while we deal with Little Athletics? You'll go? Okay, in that case, we'll deal with them all at the same time. We'll deal with Little Athletics and Community Linking Agency. Thank you. Are you going to tell me that that means my... Three. Can I ask Councillor Hanson back to the room, please?
Can I can move a separate procedural motion.
Well, you're right, Emily. We'll just keep going and we'll just move it twice.
I'm happy to move recommendation.
Thank you. Move for Little Athletics. Second to Councillor Muscat. Any further discussion? No. Put the motion. All in favour? Can I have a mover for Community Linking Agency? Thank you, Councillor Muscat. Second to Councillor Branthwaite. Any further discussion? No. Oh, sorry, Councillor Grady, yes?
Yeah, I actually attended the interagency meeting last month and last week, and I believe the Spring Ability has been cancelled, but the person that's organising it through GCLA actually hasn't been contacted. So I think if we move this motion, subject to the event.
Can I just add, every sponsorship that we agree to has a sponsorship agreement in that. Within the sponsorship agreement, there is a cancellation clause which does protect council and the community organisation. So if any of these applications or events are cancelled, there is definitely a clause within the sponsorship agreement that protects both parties.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Muscat, question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I was just wondering if, in the case, it looks like it's going to be cancelled, what's the process for them, I guess, for next year? Would they have to reapply again, or will it be, I guess...
Yeah, all organisations that cancel events that have been resolved to be funded by a particular resolution would be required, if that event is then cancelled, to reapply in the applicable round. I did check in for event status on Thursday last week, and was not advised of any change of the status of the event at that point in time.
Thank you, Emily.
Okay, thanks. I think that's fine. You happy with that, Councillor Grady? Yes. Okay, so I did have a mover and a seconder, I think. Thank you. We'll put that motion. All in favour? Motion's carried. Can we have Councillor Trevor and Hanson back in the room, please? Okay. Councillors, only items are left. Councillor reports, urgent items with notice of motions. There's no urgent items. There's no notice of motion. Is there any councillor reports? G5. No councillor reports. We do have a confidential item for those watching on live stream. Sorry, Councillor.
You have two, Mr Mayor.
Okay, I've got G8.1, which is the ready mix concrete and associated products. Oh yes, there is two, and it's written smaller. Then we have the delivery and supply of 2 street sweepers. So I have a mover into confidential, please. Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Second, Councillor Trevor. All in favour? Thank you. We'll move into confidential. For those watching on the live stream, we'll come back and vote on these in public very shortly. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Did we move out of? Yes, we did. We moved out of confidential. So we have two confidential items, G8.1, which is ready-mix concrete and associated products. Can I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Second, Councillor Muscat for the officer's recommendation, which is on the screen. All in favour? Motion is carried. G8.2 is the supply and delivery of 2 street sweepers. I'm sure they'll be very popular. Moved Councillor Hanson, seconded Councillor Goodluck, that we adopt the officer's recommendation. No further comments? No? Put the motion. All in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. That's the last item on the agenda, and I'll declare the meeting closed at 12:07. Thank you.